Hello and welcome back to Ground Level Theology. Hope you guys have been enjoying those episodes. I certainly have, and as always, with me is my co-host, Dave Hoffman. Dave, welcome back.
What's up, guys? What's up?
Oh man,
I know. What's up?
this
What's up? Like,
usually I say we have such a good episode today, but I think this is one that's gonna make people kind of feel a little called out here.
oh,
um,
they're gonna be thinking. They're gonna be thinking, scratching their heads. Yeah, holding to their
for
pockets.
for our audience that's a little bit more on the spender friendly side, this might make you a little bit uncomfortable because today's topic is what does the Bible say about debt? Now, debt
Ooh.
is kind of a problem nowadays. I've
Oh
been
yeah.
seeing more and more about people and getting into debt, not being able to get out of it. In fact, I believe it was our president had the debt forgiveness program for student loans and even I think the moratorium on paying your landlord came up earlier this year. And so we have quite a generation of people that don't really know what to do with their money and are not spending it wisely, is what we'll say.
No,
And
no, they're not.
you and I are
Not
part
even
of that
close.
age group, right? And I
We
think
are.
so this is
So
not to be
sad.
condemning and shame on you guys and all that other stuff, but this is to say that I think this
Be better.
episode's
I'm just kidding.
necessary.
Yes,
I think I
exactly.
think
Like,
I think we can have the discussion.
yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, I think I was actually reading some statistics where the millennial generation, so our generation, Mike, is I think the average American has some kind of debt.
Yeah.
But our generation, I mean, between student debt, maxed out credit cards, and there's even a bigger problem with the fact that a lot of us don't see a problem with that. They don't see a problem that like, yeah, there's like I got these loans I got to pay off. I pay off the loans with my credit card, but then I have to pay off the credit card. And it's really you're just debt shifting, but not really getting rid of the debt.
Right.
You're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that just it doesn't work out that way. And so I think we do have a problem. We need to talk about it. And like always, if the Bible really is sufficient, and the Bible does give us answers and principles to handle life,
Yeah.
then it does say it will give us solutions to this problem.
Now this topic for today actually did come by our listeners, so I just wanted to make that known because we do read the comments and we do respect the feedback you guys give us. I mean, it's not a lie. We don't just say that to get more views. We really do believe it. Someone had recommended this as a topic, and we said, you know what? I agree. I think that would be something good to cover. And so, for that listener, thank you for that. I hope you enjoy this episode. And a little bit of feedback that we've been getting as well. I was a little worried about the long, maybe 2-3 hour episodes, but we did have a listener say that they put us on what was it 2.5 speed. No, I'm just kidding, not
It's
2.5,
like
but
5 times, and I'm just kidding.
I have heard on my end as well people put us on 1.5, maybe even 1.75 speed, because we are both two people that talk slow.
We just enunciate
Yeah, I
everything.
think we just really get our thoughts out, is what it is. We
Totally.
don't just speed along. But if you're one of those viewers, we love you. Keep doing it. I listen to podcasts on 1.5 speed, so I'm proud to be a part of that group now.
Yes. Yeah, sorry for all you those thorough listeners that,
Yeah,
leave us on the normal speed.
that
No,
are
I'm
that
just
are
kidding.
there to hear the every note.
Yes. What pitch did Mike just say that at?
Yeah.
Uh, gosh.
Yeah, it's gonna be funny when people, come to talk to us in person. They're just like, "Oh my gosh, he's so much slower."
Yeah, like, oh, you really do talk like that.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
funny too because I
yeah.
was thinking, like, can we solve it? It's like, no, I this is the way I talk. It's like I can't talk faster. Then I'm not gonna be really thinking. I'm just gonna be trying to speed my speech. So
Oh, you know what?
if it helps,
Well,
it helps.
I
Absolutely do
guess. You
that.
know what? Next episode, what does the Bible say about being slow to speak? You know what? We're gonna do that episode.
Oh my gosh, you even said it
No,
slow.
I'm playing. I'm trolling. I did. I'm trolling. I'm trolling. We gotta have a laugh, folks. If you
Yeah,
don't like
absolutely.
laughing, then something's wrong with you. So, but you know what, Mike? I really am excited to
Yeah.
jump into this, and
Mhm.
uh, I had a great one. Our counseling professor at RTS, he has written a lot. You know, he got a master's in business, and he did financial advising before he got his DMin from Westminster, and so he really has a lot of great principles, and he understands that the Bible, like, and he's like, a lot of my principles I just got from the Bible because God gave us money, and it's a tool. And then the sheer irony of not even just our generation, like, of being in debt and people being in debt in general,
Yeah.
but like we talk about, as Christians, we are so familiar with the term debt, are we
Mhm.
not? If you think about spiritual debt, where Christ has set us free from our sins, we were
Yep.
in bondage to sin. The wages, wages of sin is death, or
Yeah.
Jesus paid our debt. And so the term is used a lot in the Bible, especially in a spiritual sense. And then we can carry that over into how we handle our money and our financial problems because of all things that Christ has set us free. He wants us to be free from sin. He wants to be free from the dangers of hell, free to worship him and to
Yeah.
live a life for him. And debt holds us back. Debt
Yeah.
buries you. Debt hinders you. It keeps you from being free with your money, like the Lord wants you to be free with your money. He wants you to be free in Him in all things,
Yeah.
including
Yeah.
dinero.
I mean, I
So,
remember Moody just having such a big heart for that. I think I don't know if they even still have an aviation program or if this is still around, but I remember
oh,
in their
right.
aviation program, if you were to get in, I mean, it's like this is a extremely big program in terms of a financial responsibility. You're talking at least 100K, right? And so by the end of that, you have quite the bill that you've surmounted. But Moody had this program where you had this donor, and if you finished the program, your debt was wiped out. Uh, and it
Mm,
was wiped out by the owners of the scholarship that you were essentially working through. It was just hinging that
right.
you finish the program, that you don't stop short. And as you finish the program and you're getting out to go out into the mission field, it was Moody's heart that people would not stay in the States or try and work these other miscellaneous jobs so that they can get some themselves out of debt. They wanted to make sure that their evangelists, their missionaries, and those people that are going out into the field to do ministry were not hindered by debt. They weren't shackled by debt. They didn't have that ball and chain of debt. They were going to be able to walk freely and give the gospel. And so, I mean, that's
Yeah.
one thing that's really that's been in my heart, even in my journey, is that I did not want to go in debt. I would rather stop, take a pit stop, and
Yeah.
not go into debt and save up money than to essentially create that obstacle. And I'm still doing that to this day. I'm
Yeah.
paying my PhD my way through, and if I can't afford it, I'll pause it.
Right. Well, and I think Moody, like, they didn't want us to have to pause even. Like, they're
Yeah.
like, we don't want you to pause. And so that's why it was amazing. I think it's since changed, but like for us at least, I mean, tuition paid for every
Oh
student
yeah.
that got in, so we wouldn't graduate with debt.
Hmm.
Even RTS, I can talk about it now because I'm not there anymore. You try not to share your scholarships, with other students because you don't
Yeah.
want to feel like, I'm getting the same degree, but I don't have to pay as much like you do.
Right.
But like even RTS had alumni scholarships where depending on where you did your undergrad, right off the bat, now you could
Hmm.
get more, but right off the bat, you got 50% off of a master's
Yeah. That's
just by
amazing.
where you went. So if you went to Moody or Liberty, I think Covenant College, Regent,
Hmm.
Westminster, like, so. Christian Bible, like Christian Garden City.
Yeah.
Really good. Uh, these Christian colleges you're coming out of, and so it was really nice. Like when we graduate, Moody debt free, and then now you're able to get your master's virtually debt free. That was fantastic because the last thing they wanted, and it's not that. Thankfully, where I'm at, I'm very blessed. But not
Yeah.
all ministries, it's not always as lucrative. If you're like, I just started out, 75K at this marketing firm,
Yeah.
and then and then you go up from there. It is, you have to rely on the Lord. You have to trust in His provision
Hmm.
if you're in ministry. Maybe a little bit more than if you just had like the average Joe job where you can move up the ladder real quick and you're not dependent on other people's giving, and
Yeah.
yet you don't want to make it all about giving. So it's like it's a fine line. But you know
Right.
what? But we've been debt free. Christ has paid our debt. Donors at Moody paid our debt. It's
Yeah.
like it wasn't free. It's just someone else paid it.
Exactly.
Uh, but I'm very thankful. We're talking about all this stuff, and I really want to get into the first thing I want to hit on
Yeah.
is
Let's get
a
into this.
general principle. Like we're talking about, okay, debt. What is does the Bible talk about? The Bible talks about money. It actually, and some people go,
Hmm.
such an old book, and it's a different type of currency, and it's a different type of government, and what about taxes? Well, yeah, there's taxes, but it's not the same bracket system, and they didn't have the IRS, and there's so many levels, but we actually see that the Bible does speak to us today. It is relevant. It actually
Hmm.
speaks of a whole host of our modern day complex, very complex financial issues. Things even as simple as, you know, the right to private property.
Yeah.
That if you own this property, or at least, the deed is in your name, it's your property. Even if you are still paying, you know, off a loan to a bank, you're paying off the loan. You're not paying off the rights to that property.
I
Uh,
just think that's a funny concept because I don't know how many times I've heard this before where I've heard and I understand the sentiment. In fact, I even agree with the sentiment to an extent, but I just think that it's a phrase, it's something that's a concept that's utilized that's overplayed out its hand. And that's
mm.
oh, this isn't mine. This is God's. Like I'm just borrowing it or something. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
like,
and like the stewardship language.
yeah, and they're
Yeah.
just like, oh, this house isn't mine. It's God's. And it's like, okay, I understand it. God literally owns the entire universe, but at the same time, He's
Right.
also
Right.
entrusted you to own property, right? I mean, we are allowed to have dominion over what? Nothing? He gave us dominion over the earth, right? And so, in some sense, it is
Sure.
our dominion that has been entrusted to us by the Lord. And yes, I mean, it is ultimately His, but at the same time, it is also very much our private property. My house is
Yes.
my house. My
Well, like,
car
could you
is my
imagine?
car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, your car's your car for sure. Like, yeah, these aren't my kids. These aren't my triplets. They're God's triplets.
That's it's we play the card when you're in a movie theater and they start to cry and you're just like, whose kids are these?
Yeah, exactly. And like they're God's kids now. Uh, but it, but it's like no, it's like one of those things where like in an ultimate sense,
Yeah.
yes,
Hmm.
everything that has breath is His. Even the people that use the breath to blaspheme Him, they are still His. He owns them. He created them, and then He can do what He wants with them as well. It's pretty
Yeah.
scary, but not. But that's a different story. But you have private property. Like yes, it's God's. Like if your house burns down, it doesn't give you a right to curse God because you're
Hmm.
right. Like it's His house, and He wants to make you a better person. He wants to make you more like Christ. He'll do whatever it takes. However, as so long as it's still under your care and your jurisdiction, if you're like it's He gave it to you. Like
Yeah.
yes, God gave it to you, so recognize that, but don't forget that He gave it to you. So you
Yeah.
need to use it and advance His kingdom and to share his gospel through it. And that, I mean, that even feeds well into the second idea of yes, we even understand private property in like 1 Kings 21 or Exodus chapter 20, verse 15 and 17. But,
Hmm.
this idea of stewardship, like it's God's ultimately, but he still wants us to do stuff with it. Proverbs 6 to 11 and chapter 10 and also even chapter 22, Proverbs says so much about this using our vocational, meaning our
Yeah.
jobs, our occupations. Our vocational and financial success actually comes through hard work and skill.
Yeah.
It's like the same logic of going, this is God's house. I don't need to worry about it or do anything with it. It's the same thing as going, hey, well, these are God's bills, and He'll find a way to pay them. And then you just sit back and do nothing, as opposed to thinking, hey, God's going to pay those bills, but He might pay them by using you doing a job and getting a
Yeah.
paycheck, you know?
Yeah. I
So,
I always think it's funny because when it comes to the prosperity gospel, it's like if you'll just give me, all your money, he will bless you.
right.
And then I just think the Lord has blessed you with the paycheck from the job that you're holding on to. Use that money to help you get through the month, not, give it so that you can get a lottery of money more. It's like the Lord has provided the job that is providing for you. That is, in some sense, your daily bread. He has provided that means
Hmm.
for you to have that. And so your vocation is absolutely divine.
Yeah.
It is God ordained.
And we'll get into this later about, a lot of people will use like the example of the woman who gives 2 coins. She gives all that she has to the Lord. And I've heard people, and especially like prosperity, I give all that you have to the Lord. And we're going to touch on that. Like, by all means, give everything you can to the Lord without losing your house, starving your kids, and going into debt.
Yeah.
By all means, like, and we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Uh, and also that's also a parable, and Jesus is talking more about someone's heart and not even the exact monetary value.
Yeah. I mean, which is
But
which
like
is why
I've heard it.
we stay away from sketchy things like,
Yeah.
the quick get rich schemes or the
Oh
Ponzi
yeah.
schemes or the pyramid schemes or you just
Mhm.
do this and you can earn a easy passive income off of Amazon or this or that. It's like
Oh
I'm
yeah.
just trying to think of all the like stuff that I've encountered, or like the join the what is it, the Herbalife that was found out to be a pyramid scheme. I don't know. There's quite a few that were very popular.
There's a lot.
There's a lot out there,
Just a
yeah.
ton, right? Like even like just like I like think about Mary Kay. Like you think about the makeup, like just being a representative of like you see the pink Cadillac drive by,
Oh
and
yeah,
you're like, man, she had to have sold a lot. And it's not like it's her job, and ladies are buying this makeup, so it's
yeah,
not like how dare you sell it when it's like, well, maybe they need to stop buying it if they don't need it necessarily. But
yeah,
well, like those things where it's like you see that pink Cadillac and you think, oh, well, if she can do it, if I just buckle down and I get enough people to buy in, then I can get that pink Cadillac too. And
hmm,
you just gotta weigh the pros and cons, which is why, uh, especially when we think about pyramid schemes, we don't like pyramid schemes. Why? Because they're dishonest.
yeah,
They promise just a great reward for minimal risk, and you realize there's actually a whole lot that goes into it, a lot of fine print, which is why, like, also, like, I mean, one of these issues, a lot of people are talking about equal pay,
hmm,
uh, and I hear it all the time, wage gap, and wages and prices are to be equitable. The Bible talks about that. You deserve the same pay if you are doing the same job the same way.
yeah.
And now I'm trying to be,
For the
if you're
same
doing the
amount of
same
time.
job the same, yeah, the same job, the same way for the same amount of time, you should get the same pay.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing the same job, if you're not doing it the same way, and not even just like right, but like the same quality and for the same amount of time, then who are you to be? And Paul talks about that too when he talks about idleness. And I didn't even
Yeah.
have that down as one of the references about people that are busy. You have busy bodies that are busy, and then busy bodies, if you
Right.
will. Where and so yeah, where Paul even says, if you don't work, you don't eat. So it's
Yeah.
like,
That's a big one
how
too.
equitable is that, Paul?
Like
Yeah.
that that's always like sort of a tough passage when it comes to like homeless ministry. It's just like,
Well,
well,
oh,
there are some
100%.
people out there that like they do want to be homeless, and Dave, you and I have been in homeless ministry a little bit, and we both have known some people that were like that, like got to know personally some homeless people,
Oh
and a
yeah.
couple of them did choose that lifestyle. They did want to be homeless, and that's always kind of shocking, but also not shocking, when you're around it enough. But yeah, that's I mean, Paul's here saying that, hey, you're not just gonna sponge off the church. You're not just gonna not do anything. Then don't eat with us. It's like you kind of have to. You can't just
Right.
like eat up all the food here so that when people come off of work to come fellowship with us and break bread, they don't have any food, and so he's calling them out there. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's actually
There's
a
a lot.
real lot about the subject in the Bible, and so I
Uh-huh.
think I think we have a firm kind of base to at least have proven the Bible has a lot to say about money.
It does. And like, yeah, we barely touched the sort of like, yeah, don't
Tip of the
go into debt.
iceberg.
We're going to talk about why, don't have frivolous spending.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I also don't want you to be like, give it all to like, don't give it all to me or Mike or prosperity, but also to like, invest or your family, keep food on your table, keep the lights on. Obviously the big one, so much talks about honoring God, like with
Yep.
your wealth. And that includes having compassion on the poor.
Hmm.
So sharing your wealth.
Oh,
I've heard so many phrases, right, of people. How do rich people get rich? How do wealthy people stay wealthy? They don't spend their money, and that includes, like, well, we'll get into taxes where you can consider it
yeah.
a write-off, and then you're like, are you really giving out of your heart, or you're like, I'm giving because I can get something back for it,
Yeah.
and so you gotta be careful there. But obviously, Proverbs 3, Luke 12, we want to honor God, and especially do everything unto the Lord. That includes how we save and spend our money.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I have to touch on this too, just because I have it down. Nehemiah chapter 5 and Romans 13. Taxation is a reality of life. And trust me, like my inner I am. I'm more. I'm a Christian first, but I am more conservative leaning. I'm also libertarian at times. I don't agree with
It's
everything
a
on any
lot of
side.
terms.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm saying so much, but I've come to terms with the fact that I can't just completely agree with anybody ever. It's just, I'm just a very
Right.
uh, well, except the Lord. I love it. But like, I also understand, like, I don't like taxes. No one does. And yet, we talked about this with our separation of church and state idea, where taxes are a reality of life. We need roads to drive on, sidewalks for people to walk on. We like having parks.
Well,
We
I mean,
like
it's like, what is it? What is
building.
the famous
Oh,
the
yeah.
famous quote? There are two things sure in life: death and taxes. The only thing
Yes.
is,
It's the truth.
even Enoch was taxed.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
dude, he was.
so if
And
there's one sure thing in life, it's taxes.
And I think, and even like in America, yeah, taxation without representation
Yeah.
is theft.
Right.
But if that was DC because they were the capital, and anyway, but like yeah, there's a lot of the Bible talks about wisdom. Those
Hmm.
principles also should be applied to how we handle our finances. And so I think
Yeah.
the Bible has a lot to say about it. And I'd like very briefly to kind of clear the air on maybe some misunderstandings about money. That way we can. The Bible says a lot about money. It also gives us three wonderful realities, wonderful principles
Hmm.
about what it doesn't say about money
Yeah,
that a lot of people throw around.
these are
So,
these are the misunderstandings about
yes.
money. I think understanding the
And there's
misunderstandings about money really sets like a good boundary. Because this is not what
right.
we're talking about, all right? So now that we know that, we've sort of set up the fence posts on the outside so we can kind of get towards the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the first one, I mean, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 10. Okay, this is from Solomon. Aside from the Lord Jesus Christ, who is perfect, Solomon, man with perfect wisdom. All right, uh,
Yeah,
and the richest man alive.
let me pull that up here
Uh,
for our viewers.
he, yeah, like okay, so we can trust. Well, we can trust it one because it's God's word. Two, not only is it God's word, but it's also written by one of the wisest men alive who had a ton of money, one of the wisest and richest men to ever live. And so this is what he says. You want to read that for us, chapter 5, verse 10, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. It says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity."
What?
Yeah.
What? Okay, okay, so is money not the secret to my happiness in life? Like if I'll just be happier and I'll have a better life if I just have money, that will solve all my problems. If I just made more, Mike, you don't know how many of my problems would just go away.
Well,
Is that
money
true?
can't buy you love. That's what I've always heard. Was it the
No,
Beatles or something?
no. What's the country song? It can't buy you, but it can buy you a boat, and it can buy you a truck to pull, and it can buy you a truck to pull it.
Yeah, that's it's I think this is a good place to actually just kind of put this in here for our viewers. But even in my own testimony, Ecclesiastes sort of has a place in my heart because of its nihilistic philosophy until the very end, where it sort of wraps it into a bow of what is meaningful. And there was a point in my life where I was in a deep depression, and I didn't feel like staying around on Earth very much longer. And one of the things that hit me hardest was having everything that I wanted at that point in my life. None of it made me happy, and none
Mm,
of it felt like there was any meaning to it. I actually understood philosophically the emptiness, the vanity, as Ecclesiastes is saying, to everything with regard to happiness and meaning. And so I felt very empty at that point in my life. Now I actually came to the same conclusion a little bit later as Ecclesiastes, so I sort of had to learn the hard way when I could have just read the book. It's but but it's just absolutely true. Money is not the secret to happiness. Money can make you happy, is what I'll say. I always say
mhm.
sin is sinful. Anyone that doesn't think so hasn't done it. It's sin is pleasureful. That's what I mean. Sin
Mhm.
is pleasureful. Anyone who says otherwise hasn't done it. Um, Money can make you happy. It can get you to Disneyland. It can get you on a cruise. It can get you around the world. It can get a lot of cool people around you. But at the end of it,
Mm,
it all fades. You're really just buying the next bit of time to entertain yourself. But at the end of the day, entertainment doesn't bring meaning, it brings emptiness. And so I
mm.
really do think that, like, with this Ecclesiastes book, it really hit hard for me. And I just think that, like, the more people understand that, the less consumer driven you become. Because you
Right.
understand that, hey, I have this impulse, I want to buy this. But you can mitigate it with, I have the impulse to do it, but I also know that once I have it, it's not really going to bring a lasting meaning. It's not going to bring lasting happiness. So do I need it for the long term? And that can actually mitigate some of that like impulsive buying habits, is really understanding that verse.
Agreed, because and it's like and it's talking about, it's not saying don't pursue wealth, don't pursue
Hmm.
having an income, don't, put yourself on the sidelines, because it's like, this wasn't written down, but like it just came to my mind. Another misunderstanding is like to be rich is to be ungodly. Like goodness,
Oh yeah.
than any king. Like to be poor is holier than being rich. Because that's not true. There's actually a lot of generous rich people and a lot of greedy poor people, and so you have to be careful there. But however, the idea of loving something, like where if you don't have it, you are unfulfilled, and Paul, Solomon realizes there ain't enough wealth in the world, and then even if you were able to get it, you still wouldn't, fill that hole in
Yeah.
your heart. Only the Lord can do that, and which is why on the other side of the spectrum, where you might have someone go like, "If I just have more money, I'll be happy." You could have, someone on the other side going, "Actually, I want to be poor. It's better to suffer. Uh, money, money's terrible. It's actually the root of all evil."
Yeah.
And
That
what do we
one.
say to that person? Yeah. What and I they think they're quoting First Timothy 6:10, when in actuality they're misquoting it. You have it up for
Well,
us? I mean,
it's
what
like
do you? I
they're
mean,
quoting it. They are, but there's a little bit. There's more specifically. There's probably about two or three words that go before that phrase that should probably
oh
have its
really?
light of day.
Oh, what are they?
It says First Timothy 6:10, for the love of money
Hmm.
is the root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. I'm just going to go ahead and
Hmm.
highlight this for our viewers.
Yeah, you tell me what's what. Yeah.
There's a phrase here that's going on. The love of money. For the love of money. We tend to start the phrase over here.
Yeah, exactly. Dot 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 ellipsis.
Yeah. Dot, 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 dot. Money is the root of all evil. It's like,
We should have
um,
snakes in church.
yeah. Yeah. Oh man. It is the love of money that is the root of all evil. The I mean
Mm.
honestly it's just throughout the Bible. It's like what is it? The foolish rich man. It's like, I have all this wealth. I'm going to I'm going to build up more warehouses so I can stock more of my grain and become more, and he dies.
Yep.
He dies that season, and he's like, oh, God's like, you're foolish because now someone else is going to have to take that from you.
Yep.
So it was like, it was a waste of his time. He didn't know he was going to die that season, but he had this love of his stuff. His love was in the owning, the hoarding of possessions and money, not um, dispensing it, not using it wisely, not using it to create fellowship and goodness in the world and even Yahweh worship. It was just the hoarding itself that was
Yep.
exhilarating for him. And even, Jesus calls out the rich young man for that. He's able to keep the law, doesn't get called out by Jesus for that. But in the end, he says, the one thing you lack, sell everything you have and follow me. And the guy's like, I can't do that. And so
Yep.
he has to walk away knowing that the one thing he lacks in his Yahweh worship is true following, his very
Hmm.
self. He's able to act in line. But if we can sort of kind of pivot a little bit here, it's like you have everything in a relationship with me, honey. I go to work, I give you my paycheck, I clean up the house, and what does she say? She says, "I want you. I want to
Mm,
have time with you. I want you. That's what I want. I don't want the money. I don't want all this other stuff. I want you. And the rich young man has walked away knowing that he's done all these other things, and the one thing he lacks in his relationship with God is he's not giving himself.
mm,
That's crazy.
so true.
And that is the love of money. When
It
we're
is.
chasing the love of money, we're not giving ourselves to God.
Which is why he can go further. Like, right, we didn't even bring up that. I'm glad you like we're expanding on this because the idea, like, yeah, when Jesus can say statements like it's easier for a camel to pass through
Yeah,
the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into heaven, or the fact that, yeah, you cannot serve both God and money. No man can serve. You can't serve two masters. You either
yeah,
have, because then two masters, they're both either not master, or one master is the true master over the other. Um, because
yeah.
of, just by logic, you can't have two masters. Okay, one master is going to have to be subordinate to the other. He's not a real master.
And
So,
yeah, and on top of that, people tend to take what's going on here in the gospel and they start to think, well, being rich then is terrible. Like God doesn't like
mhm,
rich people. But that's not true
right.
either. People with the correct heart that have money and are rich have to often what is called the gift of mercy. They're
Yes, it's a spiritual
able,
gift.
yeah, it's
So
a
undermined.
spiritual gift in which God has blessed them financially so that they could dispense the finances in such a way to bless others and the church. And so they can be
Mm.
a source of blessing to many through
Yeah,
their
I,
financial giving.
I mean, we wouldn't have. We just talked about Moody's aviation
Yeah,
degree. Oh no,
that's true.
no, horrible person, rich donor. How dare he give out of his abundance to Moody? He should sell everything and become poor.
Yeah.
Like,
How dare
don't
he
make the rich
invest
man
in
wasn't giving
people that will
himself.
be
Yeah,
going into the world and changing thousands of lives? How dare that
exactly.
Ebenezer Scrooge?
Yes, like exactly. And so we what? Yeah, to be rich is you're not ungodly because you're rich. How? But you can be ungodly in how
Yeah,
you do that. Same reason why you can be poor in living a holy life, as well as being poor and living an ungodly life,
yeah,
because you spent your money frivolously. You may be invested in things you shouldn't have invested in. You got into things you shouldn't have gone into, and then anytime you get, you know, your hands on money again, you go right back to those ungodly things. So it's not
yeah,
like you're more holy whether you're rich or poor. It's your God cares so much about your heart,
yeah.
uh,
And I,
which is, well, yeah.
yeah, I always like to just kind of nail it home, kind of seal the deal with this understanding. If we really do believe that rich people equal bad, we have
Oh,
this
that's
really
so, yeah.
simplistic understanding, and we think that that's what the Bible's teaching, we really miss out on that gift of mercy, and we have no way to understand Lydia. We have no
Oh,
way to
exactly.
understand Philippians 4:10 through 13 when Paul says, "I have been in abounding and in lacking. I've had much and I've had nothing." Paul has been
Mm.
rich and he's also been without a cloak in the middle of the wilderness, almost dying to exposure. Paul knows it. He's had that Solomon experience. And that's what makes that so powerful. It's being content in all situations. But we have Lydia, we have Paul, we have a lot of people in the early church, because of their benefactors, because they had money, they could open up their houses. That's what the epistles are being written to. In a lot of instances, these house churches
Mhm.
are because someone is well off enough, has that gift of mercies to open up their homes. And so, and even in a modern day example, it's just a fact that most churches, their budget runs off of about 2 to 3 families.
Yep.
And that's such a wild thing to think, because even in some bigger churches like 200 people or so, that church is still primarily functioning, maybe even off of 3 or 4 families. Most churches run
Mhm.
off of someone with the gift of mercy, and
Yes, exactly. Um,
and it's just really sad that sometimes we get the view of like, and that's actually a common day. I mean, that's what's going around in our culture a lot now. It's like if you're rich, then you essentially oppressed someone. You
mm,
exploited someone, and that's just not true. Um, yeah, there are, as we said earlier, God is able to give you jobs. God
mhm,
is able to provide, and if He provides you with a good job, you learn through your training and stuff, and you are able to, get a really good paycheck where you can earn a nice, comfortable living and even dispense that at a church and amongst others, then that's godly. That's God's gift to you.
mhm,
And at that point in time, you got to use it wisely too. And that's sort of bringing it back. That's where the love of money is the spotlight. Not having money. Money isn't the root of all evil. It's the love of it, the chasing of it, the idolizing of the money that is the root of all kinds of evil.
exactly. And I think that's why, well, that's what Solomon tries to get at. Hey, when you love these things, like when we're talking about love, like you are completely devoted, you're giving up yourself to it, your time, your energy, every,
Hmm.
waking moment. You're just thinking about money and getting more of it. It is vanity. It is pointless. You will never have enough. You will never be able to feed that beast. And as a result, because you're trying to feed that beast, it's the root of all kinds of evils. Who knows what you might do to try to feed that beast? And it all boils down to another misunderstanding
Hmm.
that we can be led to believe, and that's that certain forms of wealth never lose their value.
Oh,
That
that's
like no,
why
like
that's why you gotta have gold bars, right?
yeah,
Because
exactly.
they
You
they
need
never
gold because
go
they don't
bad.
depreciate.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
never
silver.
depreciate. That has stood the
Like I mean,
test of time.
it's true, and I've seen people that yeah, or like they're having those storehouses, and not even like doomsday. Like I mean, I saw like a YouTube video of a guy that was interviewed where, and I don't know where that Cadillac is, but in the back of his Cadillac, in his trunk, he brings his gold with him everywhere he goes.
Oh wow.
Because now think that's almost like a different kind of debt. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be all philosophical, but maybe not financial debt, but now security. You are so paranoid. You don't have your peace of mind because now that you have this wealth, you're trying to protect it.
Yeah.
And it's and but it's like but we learn in the Bible that there are certain forms of wealth that never lose their value, but that wealth is spiritual. It is
Hmm.
not material. It is not earthly. And so a misunderstanding, and if you want to pull up Matthew 6:19 through 20, people do believe that certain forms of wealth never lose their value. And yet we
Alrighty.
learn that that is not true.
Oh, I gotta. There we go.
Yep. Matthew 6:19, 20. Yep.
And that says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart is also."
And that's kind of what we were getting at with feeding the beast, right? Where you treasure most, where what you're most concerned with, the beast you're trying to feed,
Yeah.
like where you lay your treasures, that's where your heart will be.
Hmm.
The Lord cares about your heart, and it's just so to love like what we want to get out of debt because we want to have freedom, not so we can have more money, or not because we're tired of spending money on this bill and we want to spend the money somewhere else. It's like
Yeah.
not spent, not not spent, but so you can be free to do with that money what God would want you to do with that money. if you have a student loan because you went to, seminary and you got 50% off, but you had to pay the other 50 and you had to take a loan to do that, I'm not going to yell at someone for that. Like, how dare you? Um, but however, if you went into debt because you thought you had to go to seminary when maybe you shouldn't have, it's like, oh, maybe you should have. And then for any
Yeah.
degree for that matter, it's not just seminary.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
by all means,
since
when
you
you're getting
brought
into
that
debt, you
up,
don't need to.
it
Right.
just
Is that a trial?
there's sort of two philosophies to that, right? And we'll
Right.
actually expand it a little bit more, not just say seminary. Let's say you're going after your nursing degree or something. There's sort of two philosophies here. It's either I can stay out of it, work and save up until I can buy my way through that, right? And that's one avenue. You're going to try and supply it and not go into debt. Or you can take out a student loan or whatever loan you might have, and then you will be in debt and hope that at the end of the degree you will be at a place that will sit you up a lot higher. You'll be earning a lot
Hmm.
more so that when it comes time to start paying it off, and maybe I would hope that you're trying to pay it off during it as well, but when you get to that point, you are now making so much money that you can start to actually pay that entire loan off with whatever interest that's going to be, because interests are really high right now.
Hmm.
But
Oh yeah.
you know that you will be paying that price tag that you took out and a lot more because of the interest over the course of years. But because it got you up to that step of now you're making a lot of money, it's worth the risk, right? And so
Mm.
instead of waiting the time to save up the money to get yourself through, you can get yourself into the debt and pay it off. Now, that's a huge risk. That's one thing I was never comfortable with. Some fellow friends and students while we were at seminary, they did take that risk. They did take student loans and
Right.
stuff. And I was always really scared for them because I know student loans, you know, you can't
Uh,
bankrupt those. You can't.
no, you can't.
Those stay with you for life, and they have interest, they have all of that. I've heard of people paying student loans for almost their entire lives. And so to me, a student loan is probably one of the scariest things, because it's one of those loans that's protected.
Forgive them, Joe Biden. Please forgive my student loans.
Yeah, and I'm
Um,
not exactly for that either, because
yeah.
I don't
Oh,
want to
right.
foot the bill, right?
Exactly.
That's what Joe Biden is saying.
Exactly.
It's like, here I am staying, I'm doing my job so that I can pay my way through my PhD. And now Joe Biden's going to say, we're going to forgive them for their choices now that they're making this money, but they're not paying it off because the interest was so high, or they're just not making as much as they want. But, the pool guy
Ugh.
who's paying his way through his PhD,
Stop.
the pool guy can pay for their debt. It's like, I'm
Yeah,
not into that
exactly.
either.
Yeah.
Um,
The pastor guy that made sure he went to a debt-free school and that he got the scholarship
yeah.
with the triplets.
And I remember when you used to do DoorDash
Uh,
on the weekends to make more money.
that side hustle, literally, I was walking
Yeah.
and running. We're in Chicago,
Walking around
like, hey,
Chicago. It wasn't a hey, just I mean, this is an aside right here between you and me and the listeners,
yeah,
because we're on the spot.
yeah.
Dude, that was not the safest place either.
No,
Where
it
we
was
were
not.
at, yeah, there was, I mean, yeah, it was not the safest place, but you were going out there, and you were making money. And
It
um
helped being a little bit bigger.
yeah,
I
that's
think it
true.
helped being, 6'5" guy, 260 with a
Yeah.
Postmates bag. I'll hit you with this Portillo's in this
Yeah.
bag.
Well, I think God is
You come
definitely
near me.
protecting.
But
It
like, yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
bad, but it was
Um,
there was definitely opportunity for dangerous
and it
circumstances to
was
arise.
something. It
Yeah.
was, but it was something. Like, I didn't want, I was saving up for an engagement ring. I just, when you're studying, uh, you can justify it. But like, I was noticing that I was not studying all the time. And so what was I doing with that free time? When it's like,
Yeah.
why not like take it, like, make a couple bucks, and I was walking, so I got my steps in. I felt like I was being active, making a couple bucks, making better use of my time. uh,
Yeah.
just every little bit helps. Every little
Yeah,
bit helps.
that was
And so,
always inspiring to me. I mean, I couldn't do that because I was in men's choir that year. But I was like, man,
right.
you know what, Dave is really he is utilizing his time correctly. You always planned ahead. You made sure that your papers were done in advance, but then you were also, taking extra steps to try and make money where you could. And and I just think that's
I
actually a
know. I
good
couldn't just be
example
food
for
service
others
with
to
you.
see, right? Because there are these, I mean, I wouldn't say get rich quick schemes, but there are
Proverbs
legitimate ways
31.
to kind of make change, and you had that DoorDash as a
Yeah.
way of like, I have my feet, I have some time, I can go from one place to the other. I'm gonna make a little bit of money, but I'm gonna have more money than I had before. And so it was just a
Yeah.
legitimate way to wage essentially your energy for money. And so
Yeah.
that was good.
Or even ushering. Like I remember
Yeah.
like candlelight carols or Founders Week. That was a whole week where we had speakers come out to celebrate D.L. Moody's birthday, and we got great preaching and teaching that whole week. They even cut out class so you can go to those sessions. And
Hmm.
I remember thinking like candlelight carols, like, hey, I saved 25 bucks on a ticket by getting paid to usher at the same show. Or even Founders Week is like, hey, I have to go anyway. It's required as a student. Why not just like I might not get to pick where I'm sitting, but I get paid to go to the same thing that I already got to go to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why not? Like, and
That
so,
that
and
was some
now it's not about
wisdom.
ranting about dates. Not, that was
Well,
God, because I was like, and
I do think that it was necessary to go down this road because these are good examples, right? I mean, you were really taking
hmm
you were taking time to look at opportunities and see how can I shift just a little bit to make a little bit more money, right? And it wasn't asking too much of you, right? It's not like you were working 3 or 4 jobs and you're looking how to make your fifth,
no,
right? These were sort of
hmm
like you had opportunities, and just by
at the
doing
time,
this,
yeah,
yeah. And you didn't do the DoorDash all the time. I remember it too. Like it
mm-mm.
was when you had time, right?
Right,
And so those were sort of wise ways to kind of look about it. Hey, I can use my time more wisely than just sitting on YouTube for the rest of the night or something like that. I can get
correct,
out into the city of Chicago, work for about an hour, and end up with however much money, especially with the tips as well,
dude. It was
that I
nice.
had before. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was fun. And that was also, and I could have, and I know a lot of people do this where they'd make their situation like they turn like we turn everything into a trial. We love to have pity parties.
Yeah.
We love to be like, woe is me, uh, and and so sometimes there's genuine money trials that
Hmm.
God uses for our good, and then there's times where we're just being unwise, and then we label it. This is a trial. This is my cross to bear. Because I could have been like, oh, well, because if you remember, I applied. Sorry, this is a rant, but for a food service job, I wanted to work with
Oh
you and
yeah, that's
Justin.
right.
I applied for that. I applied for. I even did the inner marketing communications, like upstairs with
Yeah.
Moody's marketing team, like Moody Radio, and I applied, and I just like wasn't getting it, and it wasn't, and I'm like, oh, or like food service, like I know you guys would have me if my schedule lined up, but my schedule was like a lot of other people's,
Yeah.
and it just wouldn't work out that way, and I understand that. So I could have been like, oh, well, I was gonna work, but because I didn't get the job that I wanted, I guess it's God, that's God telling me I'm not supposed to work.
Yeah.
And like that's not what it
Not
means. It
exactly the
just meant not that
conclusion.
job.
Yeah.
Yes. Ex- and so like there's a lot of like that's definitely a wrong way to
Hmm.
like that's not a trial. However, there are things that happen in life as that are it is just life
Yeah.
where you know like it's just money it's just it's especially with this economy that we're in right now, it's just like it's just not enough. You just feel like you're always you don't know how you're going to make it. You don't know how you're going to make it. And then thankfully, for at least for me and my family, we always break even.
Hmm.
I don't know if we're always necessarily like, I don't know how you want to define abundance, but I am thankful that I don't have to worry like having feeding a family of 5, having triplets, and looking how much groceries cost. It is nice to know that I still don't have to. There's a lot of families that struggle and have like, every time they swipe that card at the grocery store, they're praying it doesn't decline.
Hmm.
Where I don't have to worry about that. Like that's a blessing. I'm able to save for our future home. The lights are on, the water's running, we can shower, we have clean clothes.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
A little fancy
yeah,
there.
I know I'm really showing off there. I don't have, for my kids, Santa's coming this year. I don't have to be scared. Like,
Right.
they're such good kids. They just want this one thing, and I can't give it to them. And it's amazing. Like I really don't have a trial. I'm so thankful. I'm blessed in that way. But we don't go thinking, hey, you know, I don't make this much money, so we say no to everything. And it's also, we don't think we make so much money, or, that it's like, oh, we can just be so frivolous where, you know, we coupon
Yeah.
and we still look for deals. And so you're still trying to be smart with your
Yeah.
finance.
And even like financial trials that people go through, are horrible, obviously, because you really wish you weren't
Right.
going through that, and they're legitimate.
Of
Sometimes your
course.
car breaks down, and it's right at the time where you're a little bit low on the funds, right? And that's
Been there.
that's really where
Yep.
kind of the enemy's attacking you. It's like
Oh yeah.
that's when the engine failure in the car happens, and it's $2,000 thing,
Oh,
and you're just like, I don't know where this is gonna come from. Certainly, trials happen, but trials can even bring about some good, too. And that's not to just say, hey, don't throw a pity party and stuff, but also to kind of give a silver lining to this. I mean, for one, they bring up opportunities for others to come up around you. There are times in which someone, because their mechanical, their car problems, a fellow congregant, and this is why you got to be in your churches,
yep.
because when you're in a church around a body of people and your friends and family with these people, you know solutions to your problems can come through the body. And so it's like, hey, you know what, my mechanic, they said this, it's going to be like $3,000. Like, what? That much for an oil change?
Mm-hmm.
You should
Oh
come
my
down to my guy.
gosh. Oh gosh,
Obviously
that's
that's
oof.
crazy, but like, it's
Yeah,
just, you
it's
sort of,
true.
you get that because there would be someone that's like, actually, that doesn't sound right. My mechanic, he does my stuff, or my cousin, he's a mechanic, but he does all my stuff, and I can talk to him and see maybe if he can do it. And like, so some solutions can actually come through that are through the body. And so these are actually opportunities in which
Mm,
the body can come in and sort of come up underneath you and lift you up. But because of that, these are also opportunities in which people can help serve, right? When people are
mm,
lacking, that creates an opportunity for others to help fill in those gaps. But even more so as well, when we end up in these situations, and I've been in it a few times, absolutely, um, where it just seems like, I don't know if any of the viewers can relate to this, but it seems to me that in my life, when tribulations come, it's not in one area of my life. It's in every area of my life.
mm.
if
Oh, when it rains, it pours.
Yes, when it rains, it pours. It's money problems. It's financial problems. It's it's school problems. It's these problems. It's that problem. It's everything at once. And of course, financial is definitely part of it. And so you're starting to think, well, how can I do this? And so I certainly relate to that. But one thing I have found in all of that is I've gone through those almost like birth pangs. I've gone through it multiple times. What I've found is that I've had to come to this zone in which I trust that this is going to be a season in my life and the Lord will bring me through it. But I have to remain
Yep.
faithful in how I'm living, that I'm living correctly and not spending like crazy. that I'm doing the right things that I need to be doing, and that I'm wisely seeking ways out of that, solutions out of that. So,
Mm.
can I take on another job? Can I take on more? Can I do more? Am I like, I'm sort of, I'm starting to
Mhm.
think, can I find these solutions to these problems? And sometimes it's just time. Sometimes the Lord just wants me to sit in this, kind of have that anxiety and trust that He's gonna provide that solution. And those aren't two mutually exclusive things. I'm seeking the
Right.
solution. I'm trying to find ways to solve my problem, and I'm waiting for the Lord to show up, because it might be by that solution. I'm looking for these jobs. I'm looking. All of a sudden, my job just decides they want to give me a raise, right? It
Right.
came through that process. It's not I need to be faithful by sitting on my hands. It can be I need to go out, and the Lord might bless that, and He might choose to not bless. He might choose to
Yeah.
bless me not through that, but solely through Himself.
Well, yeah. We saw that, and we see that with the parable of the talents.
Yeah,
Don't bury them, and use them, because especially because it's sometimes it might be like the Lord's like, yeah, maybe you need to get another job, maybe you need to find a way to increase income, or you need to learn how to be content and live within your means.
yeah,
And I'm sorry, yeah, you might not be able to buy the new Air Jordans. You know what? You're right. You might have to settle that the car that you're getting doesn't have the heated seats.
yeah.
Yes, it still has a CD player. It's not Bluetooth. I'm sorry. And like you might not be able to get the new iPhone for
You
anyone.
know,
I don't care if it's made from titanium.
you know
You
what's
don't have to.
weird? I just kind of want to say this, and I don't know if anyone's gonna benefit from this. One thing I used to do
I don't know.
while I was at Moody, I think maybe it was before I went to Moody actually. Whenever I saw something that I wanted like on Amazon, I wanted to buy it right then and there, right? And I had enough money for it. It was gonna be tight, but I
Hmm.
had enough money for it, which meant I'm not going in debt. I'm not doing any of that. It was just it was expensive, or it was
Impulse
something that I
buy.
wanted, and it would make my financial situation a little bit tighter, but I would still have room.
Mm.
But what I would do sometimes is because I would start to think, should I have this? Should I not? Maybe I should be saving, and then I should buy this when I have a little bit more, a lot more room actually. Not a little bit more, but a lot more room. Um, and what I would do is I would tell myself, okay, I will buy this, but not yet. And so instead of just pressing click, add to cart, let's purchase it, I would just put it in a
Hmm.
wish
Buy now.
list. Yeah, I
So
I would
smart.
that button is horrible.
And when your card's already saved.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Just boop.
But what I would do
Anyways.
is I would say not now. I'll buy it at a later date, and so I'd put it to a wish list. And the interesting thing was, and this is why I'm saying it, so many times I've gone back to that wish list and just deleted mass amounts of things, because the
Hmm.
by the time I finally got back to it, I was like, I don't need any of this stuff. I don't even I don't, you know what? I don't want any of that stuff. I have other stuff I'd rather buy now. And so I found that just being able to tell yourself you can have it, just not at this moment. Just wait off.
Mm.
You might actually find that you don't want it later. That it was just sort of an impulse. And so I would say, if you could even do that and tell yourself, okay, I am willing to buy it just at a later date, you might be saving yourself quite a bit of money. And not gonna lie, it's worked a lot. And that wasn't necessarily a tactic to get me to save, although I also knew I would do that sometimes. It was just something of I was trying to be wise with my money, and I knew I wasn't in a place to spend. And so instead
Yeah.
of telling myself a strict no, it was a yes, and I could commit to that yes. I could buy it at a later date. And so it was a yes, it was a negotiation with myself. And then I found later on at that date, I didn't want to spend that money on that thing. And so
Mm,
that's just
yeah,
something I wanted to tell the viewers there is just, even that
no,
itself could be saving you money.
it does, and I think even like I think a good way to wrap up this section, to wrap up this like portion that we're on right now, as far as like
Yeah.
just what does the Bible say about it, and some of these misunderstandings, even about like financial trials, misunderstandings concerning that, is what you've even noticed about yourself, where it might not have been a hard issue, it might not have been a contentment issue. It seems like it was, a timing issue immediately, and then learning like, okay, a necess like maybe an issue regarding like how am I defining need? How do I
Yeah.
define necessity? Like, oh, I really want this. I really could use this because not all the time, but a lot of our money problems are spiritual. It really is true. Like when we were looking at how easily it is for us to love money, how easy it is for us to want to serve money, and how it takes up so much of our times and our efforts, where to the point where Christ would even have to tell us to remind ourselves, hey, am I pursuing an earthly treasure or am I pursuing heavenly treasure? That a lot of not all of them, but a lot of our money problems are spiritual, and that's even Isaiah 55. And I think it's 1 and 2, because come everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. He who has no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine, milk without money, without price. Wouldn't that be nice for us to go to the grocery store and not need money or price? But the question of verse 2 is so poignant, and that's what I want you to really think about. And also
Hmm. Yeah.
money for which is not bread.
Okay.
And why do you labor for that which still? Listen diligent to me, eat what is good, delight yourselves in rich food. And so
All right. You cut out a little bit there. What was the reference? I just want to pull that up
things that you
for.
don't need. Oh,
I just.
sorry.
Oh no, you're good. Sorry, you cut out
That
there a
was
little bit.
Isaiah 50. Yeah.
Um, Isaiah 55. Is that what you said?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, Isaiah 55 verses 1
Oh, okay.
and hopefully my Wi-Fi is figuring it out now. I love
Yeah.
technology until it doesn't work.
Right.
Um, but
Come
okay, you got it.
everyone.
It's verses 1 and 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Come everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And he who has no money, come, buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen diligently to me, and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Wow, that's a really great verse. um,
Yeah, like I think like it's right. Like don't spend your money on things that you don't need,
yeah,
and don't do jobs that don't work a job, or don't spend your time on things that don't meet your needs.
yeah, that's that's really spot on there. Just it's sort of just align yourself properly here.
Yeah, like balance.
Yeah,
Like don't love money more than God, but also you know, don't forget
yeah.
that it's a tool.
I'm trying to use little like practical examples of this. And just for the viewers, I'm not trying to call any of you guys out. This is not a boomers, here if you just saved a little bit more money, you wouldn't be where you're at. But these are practical examples of things that I have seen of people just I don't think they're really thinking through their budget. They're not really thinking through some things that really
Do
um
they have a budget?
that's probably the problem. But there's sort of financial blind spots. And I'll say one and then I'll say another. But one of them is like, I don't have enough for this, and it's like $124 cost. I forget what that costed, but I remember it was pretty much that figure. It's like 124. That number is sticking out to me. And it was like, I don't have enough. I'm making about this much. So they're making about 80% there. They were just kind of lacking. But you know what they had? They were paying for Netflix, Disney, Hulu. They
Mm,
essentially had all the streaming services, which you and I both know that's about $8 to $15 each. And so this kind of
easily.
added up, and I was just
Yeah.
like, you know, sometimes, and I'll take the back door out here and not make that particular example. Sometimes we get more focused on our entertainment rather than our bills. And those
Mm,
those aren't the same. Granted, Netflix is going to send you a bill. Hulu's going to send you a bill.
right.
Disney Plus is going to send you a bill. But those aren't your bills. That's not what's going to keep the electricity on. That's not your
Mm-mm.
water. That's not where you stay. That's not to keep your phone on so that you can keep in contact with your boss. That's not your gas. That's not your insurance. And that's not your health. Those are the things you
What?
have to
What?
prioritize first. And only
Mhm.
after you're able to purchase all of that can you start going out to the outer circles of what can you do with the excess money. And you can answer that question however you want, right? Is it by going out to like Chick-fil-A or Chipotle or to these restaurants? Is it being able to get the
Mm,
Starbucks, which a lot of people are mad when they hear that, but it's also true. You can budget that in and get it. Is that where you want to spend your money, or do you want to spend it on the streaming services, or do you want to do this, or do you want to buy some nice clothes for yourself? What I'm saying here is the center circle is what is non-negotiable. Those are your bills, and then as you have the overflow, now you have extra money beyond that. Where do you want to spend it? And so
mm.
I'm sure there could be a bit more in the center circle and stuff, but that's
No,
just a real
but
simplistic example. And I just wanted to say this other example. I was talking to a kid,
mm,
and he was saying that he wasn't able to pay for something, and it wasn't that expensive, but it was necessary. And I can't remember what it was. And I was like, well, how much are you making? And he's like, well, I make about this much. And I knew he smoked pot because he was still smoking it.
uh,
And I
there you
said, well,
go.
how much do you spend on weed?
Yeah,
And he
it's an
said,
investment.
I smoke like, I forgot. It was like, I think I smoked like a joint a day or something, or maybe it was three. He smoked a lot. And I said, well, how much is that a week? And this kid literally said that he essentially spends about $200. I think it was a week. Maybe it was
Man,
every 2 weeks. But I was like, there's your answer right
and
there.
smoking is
Stop
cheaper. Cigarettes
smoking.
are cheaper.
Like, well, I was just like, there it is right there. You can
Yeah.
either roll that back, that no pun intended. You can either cut that
I was
back.
like, wow,
I did
way to
not mean to
join
do
that
that, but
together.
you can either cut that back to smoke a lot less, or you can stop it altogether and you could afford the thing that you're saying you absolutely
Mm,
need.
yes.
But I think it
I
was the
need my
pot that
CBD
was
money.
keeping him from connecting the dots.
That's
Um,
what helps me focus. Apparently not.
but it's just
No, I know.
that
Totally.
example is more to serve that there are people there that are living
Sure.
not not able to figure out how to meet that bill, how to meet the next step to get them to the next level. And it's a simple budgeting and analysis of your income and how to dispense that. It's the prioritizing that he was not doing that had a very simple answer. And I'm not here to, stand on a soapbox and tell people you could figure out all your financial problems if you just did that. But I can say that's certainly a good way to at least navigate yourself and figure out where you're at and
Yeah.
move on from there. And that's what I am saying. You might find that will help you and that may even solve your problem. But at least do that to kind of give yourself a good orientation to where you really are. And that's kind of why I wanted to
Hmm.
use those two examples.
Well, definitely, and that right there is like the tip of the iceberg of a bigger problem of why we're having this whole podcast discussion in the first place,
Yeah.
right? Of okay, the Bible says so much about money, and now we're narrowing down, not just hey, we live in a world where money is a tool, it's a necessary way of life. Now we're narrowing the focus to not just money in general, and not just some of its misunderstandings. But I think we really need to hit on the idea of okay, let's tackle this idea of debt, specifically Christians that are in debt. They want to know what does the Bible say about debt. Maybe I'm a person I'm not in debt yet, and I want to avoid it at all costs. I want to use godly wisdom, uh,
Hmm.
or you might want to like, okay, I am in debt. How do I get out of it a godly way? What are some of the steps I can
Right.
begin to take? Because like we already talked on this about, especially when we talked about financial trials, like proper trials, things that are actually considered a trial. I mean, we can get into debt for a whole variety of circumstances, right? Financial calamity, the car breaks down. You're someone like me, right? I got into that, thank goodness for insurance, but I got into that accident. What if I didn't have insurance? That minivan is how I can get my whole family around in one vehicle
Yeah.
other than two vehicles. What if something happens to your house? What if your loved one is diagnosed with cancer? Now you have these exorbitant medical expenses that now you have this great calamity like I can't afford that. No one can afford that. This is just I'm in debt. Whereas other people are unwise with their income and their expenses. Yeah, maybe they took out the student loans and they pursued a degree or a field of study that didn't have the same return once they got
Hmm.
out into the real world. Maybe, you know, instead of getting a car, like a car, you had to get the, $80,000, $85,000 Audi, or you decide to lease it, or you're getting the house that you can't afford, but appearances, or you're getting it just all adds up.
Yeah.
Where there's different kinds of debt, but no matter what debt you're in, whether it's affordable debt that you can get out if you're smart, uh, a scary amount of debt, and then I don't mean like, and then beyond scary, like what's scary, uh, what's worse than being in a scary amount of debt? You're drowning in debt and you are just like to the point where do I need to downsize my house? Do I need to sell my vehicles? Do I need to take on another job? Do I need
Yeah.
to cut up the credit cards? Like that kind of drowning. No matter what debt you're in, all of them have consequences.
Right.
Uh, there is, and so I really can say there is no such thing as good debt. I understand at certain times that there are necessary debts. It can seem.
Yeah.
It can feel that way. But all debt has consequences.
Yeah.
Uh, one is that it's enslaving. Proverbs 22:7.
Yeah.
Uh, you're
I
just
mean,
enslaved to money. Like I think here, actually,
we
I have it
talked
pulled
about
up
that
here
even with
because
Moody. It's like there is a fact that if you take out money and you owe someone, which means the paycheck that you are working for is working towards paying that person off. You work for that person. Now,
yeah,
it might not look like, Israelite slavery, where you're on their field, where you're on their agricultural land, and they're providing you a place to stay and in food and necessities and stuff. It might not look like American slavery, that's a lot worse, where you're getting whipped and stuff, and being treated horribly. Uh,
yeah, no
but
wages.
there is a
Exactly.
fact where the 8 hours that you're putting into your job, whether at a cubicle or in a warehouse or wherever your job may be, is for the person. And that
Hmm.
is, if we want to get philosophical, that's kind of a form of slavery right there.
Yeah, I mean, like that, and that's the like Mike, like that's the verse, right? Like the rich
Yeah.
rules over the poor in that instance. It's not
Hmm.
like I'm more valuable, but and the borrower is a slave to the lender. It
Yeah.
really is, because that like all you're thinking about is, oh great, now I owe you, and that's held over my head. Like I of all things, I actually really am thankful for apps like Venmo and
Hmm.
Cash App, where
And
like when you
Zell.
really are on the spot and you're like and you don't have cash on you, oh cool, like I can pay you back right then and there. It
Oh
makes my
yeah.
life because I don't want to be in debt to anybody. I especially when Paul even talks about it, and I don't have it here, was like, owe nothing to one another but love.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to owe anyone anything except love. And that's a great mindset, a great attitude
Hmm.
where I'm not in debt. I haven't borrowed from, and it's not that you can't borrow. It's just the idea of I don't want to inconvenience anyone, and it makes things awkward, especially if
Yeah.
like if you borrow from family. Like, or what would you do, Mike, if I said like, hey, Mike, can I borrow $100? Like, I'm so short. Like, I just need to be able to fill my gas tank, and I just need to get groceries this week. Can I bum $100 off of you? Like, you're my buddy. Can you do me a solid? Let's say you say yeah, but then like 2 nights later, you like walk past me. You see, well, I don't know. You probably are nowhere near it, but I'm like at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or something,
Yeah.
and I'm getting a $50. Well, it's gonna be yeah, $50 steak, and I'm getting dessert, and you're like,
Well, you got
dude,
triplets, so.
oh yeah, I do. No, but like, what
Yeah.
what would you say that, or you saw me
Yeah.
like,
Like,
oh, like, hey, can I borrow $100? And then you see me, post on Snapchat or something or Instagram that I was able to go to an awesome concert, or I got to go to a hockey game. You're
yeah.
like, why you're borrowing money from me, and yet you're like, you are going to have an opinion about how I'm spending money now,
Yeah.
because I owe you. And then now you're kind of prioritizing about like, well, Dave, you really don't need that. It's like you need to pay me off first, and that 100
Yeah.
bucks quickly turns into something that messes with our friendship that
It's
we've
true.
had for so long. Um, and so it can be enslaving. It's actually extremely costly. Actually, in fact, debt makes everything more expensive. When you're thinking about that credit card that you haven't paid off, and then you're thinking about using that same credit card to get your groceries, or Christmas is coming up, and you're like, the card's already maxed out, but this is my secret Santa at work. And if I don't get a secret Santa at work, I'm going to look like a horrible employee. I'm going to look like I don't care about people in the office. I got to spend this 50. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it just makes everything harder when you're in debt. Uh, and it's stressful. You can end up
Yeah.
even losing what you already have. You can end up losing what you
That's true.
already have.
The repo man.
So, oh, he, it ain't repo games. I wish repo games came to my area. I don't know about my car game, but like
I forgot
all
about
that
that
I
show.
see in repo, they're not repo games. You get to leave your car.
Yeah.
Uh, that ain't happening.
And it's just sad because you sort of
Mm-mm.
brought something. I
Uh,
don't think you meant to hit on this, but it's like one of the things that we had to talk about when I did homeless ministry out in Fort Wayne, Indiana, is we had a homeless ministry that would do budgeting with them, and the heart behind
mm,
that was we are willing to pay for your rent this month, but that is sort of a band-aid solution to a problem.
right,
The question is, did a financial problem suddenly come up that made you not miss it this one time because you're in a financial tribulation? Or are
right,
you in a place where you can't afford that place? You never will, and you're not budgeting properly, right? Because then that means what we're giving you won't ultimately help you. It'll just push back the problem 1 month, which, might be a lot. But it's all this to say is just
Sure.
because you're able to make it this month doesn't mean that you're going to be able to make it for the following month or the month after. What needs to change at that point is essentially your budgeting plan. Something needs to give. If you're in a place where
Hmm.
it takes $500 to live there and you make $400 a paycheck, you're never going to make it. So you need to end up at a
Right.
place that, takes that much. And of course,
Yeah.
I know my Californian people are like, what place
Oof.
is $500? That's not the point. There's a simple math here. All right, we're Bible people. We don't do numbers that well, so I'm using big
You
round
gotta go
numbers.
to, yeah. You gotta go to free states. You gotta go to free states if you want those prices. You gotta go to the real US of A if you
Yeah.
want to enjoy that price.
Even as I was saying it, I was thinking, do I have 6 roommates? Like, how do I get this? But
Yeah, for real.
it's nevertheless true. I mean, now let's say, okay, it's $500 to rent. I'm only making 400. Let's just assume I'm not worried about anything else. I'm making 400, and I'm over here coming to you, Dave, and I'm saying, can I borrow $100? Now you might say, yeah, I can do that for you. But ultimately, you're not helping me because I'm off by
Right.
1 month now. And so it's really like,
Hmm.
I can give you the $100 now, buddy, but what are you going to do here in the future so that it doesn't happen? Like, are you planning on trying to shift jobs? Are you going to get a raise? Like, what's going
Right.
on here, man? I don't want you to go through this. And so I don't think you meant to bring that up, but I've seen that too. And even in the homeless ministry that I did in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we covered that a lot because there are people that are asking
Oh yeah.
for benefactions that simply can never meet that. They're literally
Right.
relying on
Well,
people to get them through that month, even though they don't even make enough to afford that.
right. Like it becomes a crutch. And
Yeah,
then you end up taking away the incentive for I don't have to try to find a job that makes 500 or 600 or 700 because I just have to make 400 and I know that they'll give me my other 100. And
yeah,
like that ends up, that it doesn't work that way as opposed to like, yeah, someone like me or you where it's like, you know what? I'm like, and you know how I am if I can help it because, well, you need to talk to someone that is smart strategically with their spending. Like people that know how to save money and people that are wealthy, people that manage their money well, don't like not spend money. They're just smart in how they spend their money. They prioritize. It's not that they manage to get through their whole life without spending money. Like you can't do that.
hmm
But they're smart in how they spend that money and what they spend that money on. And so I know, like, if this was you, hey, Dave, yeah, I need $100. I only have $400. Like, I have a job right now that makes $400 a month. My rent's 500. Either, and like, let's say you said, and I looked around. This is, the most affordable apartment in the kind of area I want to live in. I don't want to lose it because we're
yeah.
friends. I'd be like, hey, Mike, here's 300. Here's $300. This is going to give you that extra $100 for the next 3 months, and then you and I are going to work together about finding a better job.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and because I'm also that, and I'm that, and I'm not trying to promote me here. I'm also that friend that one great way to stay out of debt is to uh, if you have to borrow money, have a friend that won't consider it borrowing and it's just a gift. And I'm
Yeah.
like, here's $300. Please be smart with it.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna, and I'm your buddy, so I'm gonna ask about how it's going.
hmm
And you don't have to pay me back.
Right. And
Like that
that's
right there,
that's a biblical example too. I mean, it's
it
like,
is absorb. Yeah, I'm getting
yeah.
ahead of myself. Yeah, absorbing the debt because it's true. Like you know what? Hey, I can get rid of debt real quick if I say, you know what, you need $100 and it's no sweat.
Yeah.
Even our buddy Noah, with a from Moody, his wife's dad was having some complications in the hospital. He texts, and mind you, this is actually so ironic because this is the day after I got in my accident with my van, and he texted me saying, "Hey, I know, like, I'm just trying to give a real life example, folks, where he's like, "Hey, man, uh, I hope you're doing okay." And I'm kind of like, "I'm not." He's like, "But I hope you're doing okay. Miranda's dad's in the hospital right now. We need, you know, need
Oh,
book an extra night at the hotel because I'm short, and can you help me out?" And like I get paid, like he's like, I get paid on Friday. I'll pay you back. And I'm like, "Here's 50, no sweat." And he's like, or like I Venmoed him 50, and he's like, 50? I can't pay back 50. And I was able, hey, I'm like, no worries. Here's the 25 to get a hotel room. The other 25, you and Miranda, when you're done with her dad, like go out somewhere wherever you're at and just have a meal with
yeah,
the two of you. And don't worry about paying me back. No sweat.
yeah,
I'll be praying for you guys. And it's not because I had a ton of money. I had just
yeah.
gotten rear-ended in
It,
my van, actually. But that's like I felt so like encouraged and enjoyed, and like God, I felt like I was being God honoring because I was like, Lord, I don't have a ton of money, but
yeah,
it was so much easier to spend, quote unquote, spend that $50 than like when I have to go to the gas pump or when I'm just like buying, food for a family of five at Chick-fil-A. Like that $50 was well spent. That was ministry
yeah,
to be able to be free to do. Or you're not free to do those sorts of things when you're in debt. Okay, because you're thinking, every $50, every dollar counts when you're in
yeah.
debt.
And
And
these
so
are
you
sort of
you know
broad principles, that like a lot of
right.
I feel like a lot of like being financially responsible is less about it could definitely be strategies and stuff, but some of it's really principle based, which is kind of why we've really taken our time to kind of go through some of those principles, even bring out some examples in which these principles aren't being used and how they could help out. Like this is, like I said, this is not to be about, you're doing things wrong. Let us show you how it's done. There's plenty of people out there
Right.
that would like to do that. That's not what this podcast is about. Really, just trying to help out. But Dave, I know you have some kind of tips and tricks, and I'm gonna just give
I
you
do.
sort of a high task because I know we're here at an hour and a half in, and
We
that's
can do
that's
it.
no problem. But I'm gonna have you, if you could, if we could rapid fire this, if we can get through this, but also take your time, all right? Because these are good ones.
Okay, I
So
can do it.
speed up but slow down is what I'm saying.
Okay. You know what? Just like that, with debt, it comes to balance. Okay. um, Uh, so we talked about like, okay, so debt, it has consequences. It can enslave you. Everything ends up becoming more expensive when you're in debt. You can end up losing what you think about what you don't have. You can end up even losing what you actually do have if
Mhm.
you're not smart. And then at the end of the day, you really do end up behind financially. Someone who's, let's say, just 5 grand in debt compared to someone who's not 5 grand in debt and they're breaking even, all that time you're taking to spend, to repay back that 5 grand, that other person, you know, who knows what they're spending or saving because they don't have that bill.
Yeah,
And you could label that, oh, look, they're privileged or something. And it's like, no, maybe they were just smart. Uh, and it is a privilege to have financial security. I'm not going to lie, but it is a privilege that can be attained with wisdom. But let's say you're like, okay, I have to borrow money. How can I avoid, like, I don't want to get into debt, but I need to borrow money. Like, is there hope for someone like me that
yeah,
is in that situation? Uh, and these are just some principles. Some of them are scriptural. Some of them are just wisdom from other financial advisors. Where obviously make the maximum down payment and borrow as little as possible.
yeah,
If you can help it, it's better to only need to borrow $50 than $100.
yeah,
Okay, because that's less debt that you have to pay off. And if it's like one of those things where, okay, I can't make $100, but I just need to borrow $50, and then you learn that you're able to make, $25 payments. as opposed to making $5 payments. Uh, that's another thing that gets people into debt with credit cards. They're only paying the
Yeah.
minimum balance, as opposed to paying it in full if you can help it. This is the second thing, and it kind of goes hand in hand. Getting out of debt, you need a budget. Avoiding getting into debt, having a budget. Spending your money wisely, you need a budget.
Yeah.
Budget.
Budgets.
And so, yeah, budgets. Like you need to have one. And with so many things out there like Mint and Rocket Money, I even have. You don't even have to be this advanced. Like I have an Excel program that well, it's in Excel. I made all the charts and then I transferred what was in Excel to like Google Sheets. That way, me and my wife both had access to it at any point in time.
And
So if
guys, it
she
could be
made an
even more
expense,
simple than
she could
that.
log it right then and there.
You know what they used before
Oh,
Excel
totally.
and before Google Sheets? A piece of paper, a sheet of
Notebook
paper,
paper.
which is why
Yeah,
they call it sheets.
seriously.
It's just make a chart or just write it all out. It's a pencil and a paper is all you
Yeah.
need.
Income and expenses. And if your expenses are more than your income, you either need to grow your income or lower your expenses, or do what I try to do, always be trying to increase your income while simultaneously trying to lower your expenses. Do both.
Yeah,
Uh, but you need to ensure that your monthly payments are well within your budget if you're
yeah,
going to have to borrow money. Avoid borrowing money for depreciating items. Don't borrow money for things that don't hold their value. Okay, if you can help it. And if you have to, you pay that off as soon as possible. There's nothing worse than having to pay $50,000 on a loan for a car that's now only worth 20,000.
yeah.
Meaning if you were to sell it, you would still be 35,000, $30,000 in debt.
Hmm.
Like you don't want that. So you avoid that. If you're going to borrow money in order to pay for consumption items, like don't obviously you don't take out loans for this. But if you're borrowing money from so and so just so you can get your groceries, like that's bad. If you have to
Yeah.
borrow money to cover essentials, that means you need to seriously cut out a lot of frivolous spending, unnecessary expenses. You got to redefine what you mean by necessary.
Yeah.
Okay? Getting your hair done every week, ladies, or dudes getting your hair cut or trying to get a new suit every month, that is not necessary. Maybe your line of work it is, but usually if you're in that line of work where you need a new suit every month, you should be making enough to buy
Yeah.
a new suit.
I mean, one of the
That's
ways that I
not
cut is I
normal
stopped
spending.
buying soap. I just don't use soap and I just stink all the
Oh
time. No,
my
I'm just
gosh.
kidding. No,
No,
I'm making a joke,
we
but I mean,
should.
obviously, your income is a major part of what we're talking about. But if you're
Correct.
spending kind of in the weeds out there and that's affecting you not being able to eat and afford your groceries, then there's something severely wrong there.
Yeah, and you wanna and debt should be your first priority. I think we have a debt problem in this country because people's debt has not become their first priority. Their
Right.
entertainment, their happiness, this endless pursuit of trying to buy something fulfilling,
Oh
and
man,
it
I'm
just
sorry.
doesn't work.
I need to cut down your rapid fire real quick
Yeah,
just to say this.
yeah, press in.
We we had I mean this is just sort of really to kind of showcase that problem of like entertainment has become more important than even getting yourself out of debt and out of harm's way. When Joe Biden had tried that debt forgiveness and sort of had like a moratorium on student debt, um, he actually wanted to send out, I think it was like a stimulus for people who were in um, student loan debt. And
Hmm.
what we had found out is for those that did get it, and I think it was something like 2,000 or so dollars, he did send it out. And what reporters were finding were that the people who had received those used that to go out shopping, to go on vacations, and to go, to these
Hmm.
places rather than on their debt. And when asked about it, they were like, well, it stresses me out, so I need to go on a vacation, so that I can handle this when I get back or something, or he'll figure it out. And it's just, they were not
Mm.
dealing with the problem. They were sort of trying to sweep it under the rug. That rug gets bigger with all the dirt that's under there.
Yeah.
And
Oh, it
eventually,
does.
that
Well,
mountain
mm,
eats up the rug because it's too
yeah.
big. And you have a mountain of dirt in your room, in the middle of your living room. And so, debt, it's not going to go away. You have to attack it. You have to chip away at it. And you have to be really,
Yep.
like, really on it with how can I be ruthless in my saving so that I
Yes.
can chip away at this more? How can I chip away at bigger chunks and not ignore it? Because that's the biggest problem. People want to put it on their card and not have to deal with it. People, as long as it's out of sight and out of mind, and folks, just so you know, that's part of how they've sort of designed it. So long as it's a plastic card, you don't see the money changing hands. And
Hmm.
even Vegas uses that, which is why you don't have money on tables, you have chips that represent money.
Yeah.
Because chips are far
Yep.
easier to gamble than showing $100 bill on a table that
And then
you're
bye
gonna
bye.
lose $100 rather than like, what is it, a green chip? I don't know. I'm not a gambler, but rather than
Depends
that,
on what game.
yeah, whatever it is. But rather than
Yeah.
that
Sorry.
one chip, it's by design. The card is there because it doesn't look like money. So it is out of sight and out of mind. And so you owe them more money. And so it is one of those things that by design they don't want it in front of your face. You have to put it in your face so that you can chip away at it. And so
Hmm.
that's one thing that I want to say, because it is a fact, like especially with our culture right now. And I just wanted to bring out that Joe Biden thing, that like, yes, people are literally going into entertainment and using that to get their minds off of the debt that is just absolutely crushing them. And that's only exacerbating the problem. You know, the more
Yeah.
that you allow your debt to dig the hole deeper for you, the further away from ground level you're going to be.
Yeah.
But if you're working your way
Yeah.
back up and not ignoring it, then you're gonna be able to get yourself out of the hole all the sooner.
Correct. Like to be in a debt, it means you're in a deficit.
Yeah,
Exactly. And like even like another example, like with the stimulus checks with COVID to try to boost the economy again, uh, and all
yeah,
that fun stuff. Like, not to be too transparent, but like we didn't like spend that. When we got that stimulus check, we did three things. We tithed on it because it was free money. So I'm not trying to be like better, but we tithed on it. So $200, or it was 2000. Yeah, so $200. Then we paid both of our credit cards off.
that's a good use.
We Yeah, tithe, paid off our credit cards, and then we saved what was left over because we knew that something down the line would affect our tax return because of it.
Yeah, that's really smart.
We knew that $2,000 ain't just coming out of nowhere. It's going to be someone's going to have to pay that money somewhere, and so
Yeah,
either it's going to be considered, you know, you know, yeah, a benefit. It's going to be considered income. It's going to be considered something on your
yeah,
taxes. And so we wanted to be prepared for that if it had affected our return at all. As
yeah,
opposed to like to stimulate the economy, we didn't just yet go out there like we got 2 grand, we can go to the concert, we can you know like invest it or something. It was like, hey, this is free money, like, well, quote
yeah.
unquote free money.
What would I
Let's
use with
use
free
it.
money? Yeah, with free money.
Yeah, let's remember the fact, like, well, let's give it to the Lord. let's pay off our credit cards so we can use the money that would have paid off the credit cards to now maybe save or get ahead on something, put it in an emergency fund, because that's another point. Like when you have to borrow money sometimes when those big when I talked about how sometimes people get into debt because of financial calamity,
Hmm.
it's nice when you have a margin, when you have a buffer that you can actually meet some of like your short-term savings in your budgeting. That way when that way when you were planning to make $1,000 in March and you only made $800, you're okay because in February you budgeted 1,000 and you made 1,300. You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So you took that 300 and you were smart with it. That way, when you were in a deficit the next month, it's like you're breaking even,
Mm.
and it's really nice to be able to have that cushion. It's a reason why it's called a cushion because it's something you can fall on and it don't hurt so bad.
Right.
Uh, and that's like so if you have to borrow, you want to think of those things where it's like if I'm borrowing money, do I have margins in the sense of the last thing you want to do is like you owe 50,000 on something and you borrow 50,000 and now you have no money left over to pay for anything else whatsoever.
Mm.
Or you hear about cars that are brand new, they depreciate as soon as you drive them off the lot. It's like, great. I now have a $30,000 loan. It's a $30,000 car. I got a $30,000 loan with interest, and as soon as I drove that car off the lot, it's now worth 22,000.
Yeah.
And it's like great. So now I'm paying a $30,000 loan with interest for a car that if I were to sell it right back, I'd still be 8 grand in debt.
Yeah.
Like don't like if you can avoid it, don't do it. Get a car hand me down. Do swap title on. I know Craigslist and Facebook can be kind of scary,
Right.
but like try to be strategic. You know how many times my car I got from my wife's grandparents because they barely drove it, they weren't driving anymore, and they gave it to me, someone who would. You just gotta people at your church. You never know. Uh,
Strategery.
that's strategery. That's if you gotta borrow. But like, okay, you are in debt. You're like, great, thanks, good to know, Dave. But like, I didn't have these money principles.
Too
I
late,
didn't know
Dave.
to avoid. I'm in it.
Get
I'm
me out of
sunk.
it.
Get. I was like, and that's why you have financial advisors, right? Do you not? They have people that help you get out of it, and the Bible can do that too. And I kind of already hit on this that there's different degrees to people's debt. Some of us are on the track to being debt free. I remember, when me and Amber had to get that minivan because we found out that we were becoming a family of two and becoming a family of five in a matter of months. Where it's like, oh my gosh, like I have a back row, I need a third row. Okay. And you're like, great. Me and Amber both have cars. We weren't planning on needing another car or having another car payment, right? Thankfully, we are so smart and how we were able to handle things in our jobs where we got that van in March. We had that sucker paid off by September. And it was, yeah, we were kicking butt. We also got a great deal but we were on track to being in that moment. We were debt free. We ended up having to get into debt, but then our job was to get out of debt as soon as possible.
Right.
Then you have other people that have manageable debt. The folks that, maybe, yeah, they had a lot going on during the holidays. Maybe they had to travel and they had Christmas and they still have things like their mortgage where they're not like they feel on the track to being debt free, but they're just making dents.
Hmm.
But it's going to take some time to really they're in manageable debt. So you have people that are on track of being debt free, people that have manageable debt, people that have major debt problems where they're just like, yeah, unless I you know, really get a budget squared in. I get more income, get a budget, and kind of cut some things off. Like we have a debt problem. I need to cut off some credit cards
Hmm.
when drowning in debt in the sense of like people that like you're gonna lose your house. You're getting your car repoed. You're even wondering, do I file bankruptcy? Kind of bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the fact that that category even exists, it just shows you how much of a problem this is.
And there are people that
Um,
are in that category,
but to
unfortunately.
summarize all that, there are. And so, is there any hope? That's what we really like. Is there hope? Do I need to pretend like, you know what, I need student loan forgiveness. I need the debt ceiling to be raised because I can't do it. It's impossible. David, if you just saw how many bills I have, if you just saw the number, just how many thousands of dollars I've racked up over time, like, and you're going to try to tell me that we can figure it out. The Bible tells me how to figure. I'm saying yes. Take
Yeah.
a quick breath and just hear me out for this. All right. The first step, if Isaiah 55, 1 through 2 is true, that a lot of our debt problems are spiritual. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Let's take a deep breath, identify and repent of any sins, if they exist, that might have contributed to your financial crisis. Okay, like, was it frivolous spending? Did I buy the BMW when I should have gone, the 2004 Toyota Corolla?
Hmm.
Did you buy a house that you can't afford? Uh, did you make poor spiritual decisions in who you got into a relationship with, and now you have to pay child support or alimony because your marriage couldn't work out? There's a whole host of things that could be happening and why you might be in debt.
Or you're just dating, and the girl that you've chosen to have as a
Yeah.
girlfriend is one of those crazy spenders,
Mm.
and you are not doing well keeping up with her. It's like,
Ooh, good
well,
call. Another
maybe
purse.
she's not it. This
Yeah,
would be a
yeah.
good time to let go of the rope before it, drags you down to
Hang,
the bottom of the ocean.
yeah, and you hang yourself with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, uh, that's a big thing. That's the first step. Like, and that's why we have the problem that we have. No one is acknowledging the debt. They're going student loans, like it's considered a
Hmm.
given nowadays. Very rarely can I go up to a college student and be like, oh, you're not in debt. Like that is like such a rare exception to find the
Yeah.
student not in debt.
Right.
Like it's a given now. You want to go to college, you're going to be in debt. It, it's so sad. But identify if there's anything that you might have, is it a true trial? You have a good job, you're trying to steward your money well, and it just happened, and you need the church to help, family to help, or are you doing it to yourself? And you need to really assess that. Um, that's the basis. Building on that, because if it is a personal problem and you don't address it, it doesn't matter how much help you get, how much money you're given, because the root problem is you or your situation.
Hmm.
If it is that and you don't change it, then it does feel hopeless.
Yeah,
But
because
the
it's a
gospel allows
frank
us for freedom.
truth. You are the
Yeah.
reason why you got into debt.
Yes.
You are the common denominator for your own debt. And so, I mean, things can happen outside of your control, but in some sense, you do have to come to the responsibility that I did get myself here in some capacity. Even if it was outside of your control, some things, it's still happening to you, and you are still the driver of the car, right? And so you're going to have the
Hmm.
responsibility that, you know, maybe I wasn't the reason why I'm in debt, but I am the person that needs to get me out of debt. And there might be some things that I
Mm.
have to change. One example of this, just to kind of meet people where they're at, maybe you're kind of working paycheck to paycheck, and some drunk driver slams into your car. Now you don't have a car, you know, and now you have a huge financial trouble. That's not your fault, but you are still in the driver's seat for getting
Hmm.
yourself out of the situation. And so now you have a budgeting crisis. And so
Yep.
there is still this point at which you have to be responsible. You have to hold yourself responsible for where you're at, and you are also responsible for getting yourself out of that position. And so there is a
Hmm.
necessity of kind of owning up to the position that you currently are in.
Yeah, and like, and I'd even say like we're not in debt, me and Amber, thankfully. But like we know, like you have the hypotheticals. What if what? See, that's the other thing too. Planning. What if something comes up?
Yeah.
And it's not being like a worry wart. It's just trying to think: is there something that I could be doing now that might make it a little less of a blow
Yeah.
in the future if something were to come up, because it's never timely, it's never convenient, you never really plan for it.
Yeah.
uh, so but the idea of like, I don't want to commit and incur more debt than I need to. Okay,
Mhm.
like if you're in debt, as best you can to not incur any more and drastically cut your expenses. And so I say that me and Amber, thankfully, we're not in debt. But we have, thankfully, and we've never had to touch it, but we have a first to go list, if you will. We have our expenses and we have a list of these are the things that are first to go if we, have to take out a loan, or if we're not meeting, if we're not able to meet our necessities. Like if we can't keep the lights on, we can't get our groceries, we can't, survive, make our rent or whatever.
Yeah.
And so because that's what you need. I need a place to live. I need to be able to have, it's the winter time coming up now. Uh, I need a warm house for my babies. They need to be able to eat. And so, yes, Netflix gone, Hulu gone, uh, a date night, that gets dropped. Uh, and yeah, at first it might be like, hey, it gets dropped to you're able to do, something like Chick-fil-A once a month or zero. You got to evaluate. But it's like, hey, we're going to go out once this month as opposed to once a week or whatever it is.
Yeah.
A lot of those things. Okay, hey, we are driving this one vehicle alone the whole month. That way we only have to fill up one car and it gets the best gas mileage. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we
Yeah.
just have that list. Uh, to, and that's also like, those are some things I think by us doing now to a degree also keeps us out of debt. It's a
Yeah.
way to get you out of debt, and it's a way to keep you out of debt if you're thinking smart. It may be not a huge return if you're like, you don't want to drive 5 miles to save 3 cents on gas when like the one right down the road. But like knowing like, hey, oh, I get 10 cents off a gallon if I go to this grocery store, just trying to be smart
Yeah.
with your thinking about how you're spending money. Like that's the big thing. Thinking about how you spend it where, you know, like, or I even said earlier, we said increasing income, like work smarter, not harder. You got to do
Yeah.
the rate of return. Like if you're only increasing your income by, $2 an hour, but then you're going to be spending 10 more dollars a day in gas to get to that job. Like, you know what I mean? Like you got to think like that
Yeah.
too. Like, oh, it's a better
That's
paying
true.
job. Well, are you just going to end up breaking even still because you made more money, but now you have to spend more money?
Yeah, and
So
that's an unfortunate thing that people don't realize either. It's like I make this much money at this job, but you spend this much money to get there. If you made less money and it was down the street, you'd make more money in the end, right? Because you're not
yeah,
spending
way
that
more cost
money.
effective.
But even also, I mean, increasing your income, it's like, yeah, well, my boss doesn't want to give me a raise. I completely get it.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things that I really liked about my job was that it is a constant source of paycheck, of money that I could depend on. I knew what I was making. As long as I put in the time, I would get this paycheck. But at the same time, and this is a lot more uncomfortable for people like me and maybe you, the viewer. I'm sort of an introvert. I like the routine, right? I like the comfort of, understanding everything is going to go through and then just kind of working through that mode. But one of the things that I'm probably not being aware of is I can apply to a different job. In fact, it costs me nothing and my job won't penalize me so long as I don't tell them that, hey, if I just, you know, kind of send my resume out to places and see how much that they would pay me for the same job, I might be able to make more with a different company and go there instead, or maybe even get more benefits or something like that. And it does nothing against me. So you can actually
Mm-hmm.
increase your income by just sort of keeping your head out in the market of like, hey, am I making what I should be making in my field, or is my field going up, but my job is still paying me here, right? And so just keeping your head out in the
Mm,
market of just kind of, hey, where's the market now? Will anyone pay me to do the same job? And obviously, like I said, gas is going
yeah.
to be
Uh,
part of that, but you can increase your income just by simply knowing you're not stuck at where you're at. One of the funny things is because of California being so crazy, there was sort of this thing of like, people were working their jobs and then they realized I could actually be a McDonald's worker and make about the same, if not more, because now they're paying like what, 18? I don't know what minimum wage here
well,
is
thanks to it
anymore.
went up thanks to Mr. Newsom in the
Yeah,
last two
Mr.
months.
Newsom
It's like 18.
and his craziness. But there were people that were actually leaving their jobs saying I could actually make more money hourly at McDonald's than I am at my job, which is
Mm.
insane, but that's actually a
And a
good
lot less
move.
stress.
Especially, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But especially since they are thinking, how can I increase my income? And they understand by going to this job, a lot less stress. I'm making more hourly. Why am I staying here? That's just one of the things. So, guys, you could be just kind of understanding, keeping your eye out in the field, and you could be increasing your income.
Yeah. And this is a very, very quick aside. With COVID, the option for remote jobs now, remote employment, all right, uh, you might not have a job that allows that, but look for those options because
Yeah, that's true. Um, you are cutting out there,
because
Dave.
I know when we went remote,
Mhm.
like
No, go
yeah,
go ahead. You came back in.
yeah, no, I'm just wait, yeah, sorry, dramatic pause for effect. Um, no, but like when you get when you have a remote job, it actually dramatically affects so many things because you're still getting paid for the same. You're hopefully doing the same job. But you don't have to worry about a commute. All right, you might be able to like for ladies, you might be able to save on hair and makeup because you don't have
That's
to get
true.
all done up and ready every day. You get in your PJs. You save money on gas. Also, it lowers your car insurance. Talk to
Mm,
your car insurance provider, depending on who you have. Hey, I'm not putting that much wear and tear on my vehicles anymore. So gas, maintenance visits with your mechanic, having
that's
to
true.
change your tires, the insurance that you pay on the car. So many things are affected just because out of nowhere, it's like I can do the same job that I do at home instead of in an office.
Yeah,
And the company sometimes might like it because great, it's one less person that they have to, you know, have a space for, bathrooms for, keep the lights on, whatever, the overhead.
yeah,
And so there's a lot of like you just part of it's like I don't want to like you just have to think and be looking. But there are opportunities if you know where to look. But let's just say, okay, I'm in debt. I don't have those remote options. I have to commute, or maybe you don't even have a car. You got to take a bus, and so like you're at, you know, it's just really bad. Um, some of your possessions. That's hard to do. We talked about cutting Netflix.
hmm,
We talked about streaming services or lowering your date night bill. Don't go out as much. Maybe you don't get the new pair of shoes. But there might be some things like your possessions, where don't take your games to GameStop. They'll rip you off. But other ideas, um, I like. Do you
practical
have?
advice. This is what you get here. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Thank you. Wisdom. Yeah. I'm just saying you'll get ripped off. All right. But it might be like, oh, yeah, a piece of sports memorabilia, and you gotta, give it up on eBay. Maybe it's yeah. Apparently, who
Yeah,
would have thought that
selling some
all
of
of
that
those,
stuff.
oh, dude, Pokemon cards. I think that was like our childhood. If you ever collected Pokemon cards, like they're vintage now, man. They're like, you got the
Oh,
OG Pikachu. Like, I mean, like, dude, if you it, if you are hurting, okay, you're not hurting that bad. If you apparently, if you're okay with having student loan debt, credit card debt, you can't keep the lights on. But if you had to sell a Pokemon card, it's the end of the world. Then you got messed up priorities. Okay, you should be like, hey, I need to have food on my table. Bye bye Pikachu. Okay,
oh,
and
I have a story on that actually. Um,
share the story.
it's
We love.
so I'm a pool guy, so I have customers. I don't like having a relationship with my customers. I prefer to be the anonymous ninja that one day their pool looks very leafy and the next day it looks beautiful. And they never know who the guy is that comes by. That's the way I prefer it. I like to be by myself. I like to be listening to my podcast and I like to work. Like I said, I'm an introvert, guys. The fact that I'm in ministry and stuff is purely the Lord. But there
Mm.
are some customers that I talk to because they're there and they like talking to me, and I enjoy talking to people. It's just I prefer not to. But I really do
Yeah.
enjoy talking to him, and he was affected by the SAG strike, the writer strike. He works in Hollywood. He
Mm.
works in the industry, and and that's why I was getting to this. So I really enjoyed talking to him, but I did not realize until last week how much it affected him until he told me. He's like, "Hey, I'm kind of happy that they're finally signing the documents so I can go back to work." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. You were affected by that." He's like, "Yeah, I sold my Corvette." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, man,
Mm.
I had to sell like he was working on that bad boy. I mean, that was sort of his hobby car. He was working on it, and he's like,
Oof.
"Yeah, I had to sell it, just so I could have some money to make sure that I made it through the strike." And he's like, "It's starting to
Oh
get tight,
man.
but it got me through it. And I was just like, "Whoa, I did not realize he was being affected by that. I should have, but I didn't." But he had something like that. He had something of value that he knew was going to get him through this troublous period, this trouble period. And he had saved
Mm.
up, and he had these resources that he could tap into, is what I'm saying. And he did. He sold the Corvette. And it's not like, the 2023 Corvette. This is a nice old Corvette that was
Nice
beautiful.
stingray.
So yeah, it didn't sell for
Mm.
200 thousand or something like that,
Oh.
but it was a bit of money that he could live off of during the strike. And so I was like, wow, that's crazy that it affected him to that extent that he had to do something like that. But it's also a perfect illustration of like being able to be set up in this way where you can make those adjustments for that. And he did make that adjustment, and he's living perfectly fine. One Corvette down though,
Mm.
but he was able to provide for himself in something like a financial crisis in which he couldn't work because of a strike. So yeah, that was
Mm.
honestly some pretty good financial maneuvering on his part.
It was because debt. We talked about debt is costly. Everything becomes more expensive when you're in debt, and you can like imagine. Yeah. Would you rather have a pile of bills and be able to walk? Would you rather have a nice Corvette to be able to hold all your bills in, or
Yeah,
or you lose the Corvette and the bills with it?
yeah,
Or not forever, but like you lose the debt with it, and so you can breathe. And so the whole point is to be able to create breathing room in the sense of even the idea of having credit cards. Like if you have a credit card and you know that like it is just second nature just to pull it out and swipe. Uh, do what I call, and Dave Ramsey calls it this too, like plastic surgery, where you cut up that piece of plastic because you can't swipe it if you don't have it. And
That's funny.
you cut up that card. You get out of debt and with plastic surgery. And I remember even my parents one time, and I don't think this is oversharing, just like where it was like a birthday gift, Christmas gift one time of because I think every relationship has at least, well, if you have a relationship with your where you're both spenders, you can be careful. But I
That's funny.
think
Yeah.
relationships have two savers. Some have two savers. I know in our relationship, Amber is the saver, I'm the spender. Amber will save just to save.
Yeah.
I save to spend,
That's
which
funny.
isn't really saving.
It's kind of the same
I
situation here. I just realized that yeah, I she's the saver and I'm the spender, but I have the exact same philosophy. I save so that I can spend later. So
yeah,
I like to
is that
create a big nice nest egg that I can tap into and splurge on later.
yeah, because it's like because and you gotta be hey, you just got to remember like there's a difference between having a savings and and then and then to be saving in the sense of
Yeah.
like knowing what you're spending that. Yeah, look, I saved 3 grand. Okay, yeah, Dave, we're about to drop it on like a vacation or something. Like it's like
Yeah.
as opposed to like Amber, like we saved 3 grand, so you know if like we're saving up for a house right now, there's nothing worse than you're saving for a nice down payment. You're saving for a nice down payment, and then people forget, like, yay, I just got this house with a nice down payment, but then you got to furnish the house, or if something goes up in the house as soon as you get it, like
Yeah.
that's when you need the saver that just saves to save. You need both. But when
Hmm.
you have a spender, you just got to know your tendencies. We're balanced, for me and Amber, where it's like, hey, see, it's kind of like we can splurge a little bit, but you also reel me in. I also help make sure that you have a little bit of fun sometimes with our money, but we don't get too carried away.
Right.
It's like both of us. But I remember, so bringing this back, rabbit trail, not overtrained, but like one year, like a Christmas gift from my mom to my dad, where she cut up her credit cards.
Hmm.
Like that was a gift to my and it felt like a gift when you're a team in the sense of like, hey, we're going to get out of debt and we're going to get together. Look, like this is my gift to you. I cut up our credit cards. I can't spend with my credit cards if they're cut up.
Yeah.
And even then, that was a spark of hope because at least, if nothing else, you're not going to incur any more debt. You're
Yeah.
not going to get into any deeper debt, and you're not going to end up, And that's another thing when I've seen people. It's called balance transfer, where
Hmm.
what happens is they have debt on one card and they open up another credit card and they're able to transfer the debt from the first credit card onto the second credit card. And then they might feel like they're being more strategic if the second card has a lower interest rate
Yeah.
because they're thinking like, see, look, I'm being smarter because it's like instead of paying this debt at 5% interest, I'm now paying this debt at 3% interest. But it's like, but you're still in debt. And now instead of having only one credit card to worry about, you now have two credit cards.
Yeah.
And and there's just yeah. And so you don't want that. And so you want, think of podcasts like this. There's a lot of resources, even like Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace, like
Yeah.
of godly counsel, accountability, where the last thing you want to do is to get into more debt to get out of debt. That makes no sense. That's a horrible way to do it. And I want to get into the spiritual elements. There's like so many of these principles of like do this, don't do that. This is more strategic. This is also all a process. You
Yeah.
can't be 100 grand in debt and then really do, you know. And I wouldn't say win the lottery because a lot of people that go into debt trying to win the lottery.
Yeah.
uh, you want This is a process where you have to ask the Lord for help. Pray to Him every day. Seek His mercy, seek His wisdom as you face financial decisions. Confess your tendencies to Him. I told you all that are listening, I'm the spender in the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I have to acknowledge my own tendencies in my own heart where, am I going to feel like a bad father because I didn't get everything on my boys' Christmas list when they get older? Am I going to feel like a bad husband? Like because I didn't get Amber a new Coach purse when she might just want more attention, more intentional dialogue every night, and maybe a back rub. You know what I mean? And just realize, or like, am I trying to buy something? Do I get more fulfilled out of having a certain number in my account or after spending? You know what I mean? You just got to recognize your own tendencies. Think about why you got into debt in the first place. Think about why you feel like you need to borrow money in the first place and take it all to the Lord in prayer because He's the one, He knows all about debt. He's the
Hmm.
one that's forgiven us our debts. And so if you're in debt or you're thinking about borrowing money and you're trying to avoid debt or as much debt as possible, um, there's there are some ways to get ahead of it. My mom, she cut up her credit cards because she's just like, you know what, it's not even just like one after the other. It's like I got to get rid of them all
Yeah.
because I need like her personally. I need to go cold turkey. For me, it's more of like, hey, I have a credit card, but I need to treat it like a debit card. And another way that me and Amber keep each other accountable is that we are both authorized users on both accounts.
Hmm.
Every like, and I know some couples. It's interesting. A lot of couples, especially in the world, where they are so willing to share a home, to share a bed, to have children together, but they won't share their money, and they won't share their accounts. It's like they're
Yeah.
willing to have so many things, but when it comes to their money,
Oh,
they
this is
hide it and
my
they hoard it.
money.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And and it really, when you make it ours and we're a team, it's like, and that's another thing. Like when you get into a relationship and someone has debt, like I'm absorbing it. It's like I'm taking the debt that you have,
Yeah.
and when you get into a relationship with me, it's now our debt. That's, I mean, hey, like you need to think like that.
Yeah.
Um, but when you think of this, like we're joint on everything.
Hmm.
We both have access to every single checking, every single savings, both credit card accounts, and we see what we spend, like within reason. Like we're not always going on there, especially like me or Amber. We know when we come up near the holiday season, like don't go check my credit card near Christmas because
Yeah.
then you're going to see like what I'm getting you. Like we know we're a team. We've been married for over 5 years now. We know what works. But for some, but for the average Joe, so these are just methodologies. This might work, might not work for your situation, but it's just some help. Dave Ramsey talks about this all the time, the debt snowball. And perhaps
Yeah.
you've heard of it, and everyone says, yeah, it's a nice idea. But it's just eliminating the smallest debt first, bite-sized pieces. And we might have heard the phrase, Mike, how do you eat an elephant? Ever heard
With
that phrase?
barbecue sauce.
Yes. And and you say,
And one
um,
bite at a time. Yeah.
and one bite at a time. And there are times where I felt, I've even like remember discussing with my parents, like, well, what if you have 10 elephants? And it's like, well, chew fast. But it's
Yeah.
like,
Too fast, but one bite at a time.
but one bite at a time. But if you eliminate the smallest debt first, and then, hey, okay, I owed $100 on this credit card. Well, that's gone. But now, because you got that taken care of, that $100 that was originally going to that card can go to the next card or the card payment or the
Yeah.
house, whatever it is. Uh,
Because then that 100
Another way,
becomes
yeah,
something else after you've finished your first mountain.
yeah, and don't go like, and you got to be wise. Don't go like, oh, I have this $100 now, and so I can be like frivolous. Like be smart with that. Um, and maybe another way, it's like a debt snowball, only instead of eliminating the smallest debt first, you might eliminate the highest interest debt first.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, this card is $1,000 and this one's only 100, but the $1,000 is, or the $100 is like 8% interest, whereas $1,000 is like 1% interest.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah,
better to
there's sort of
get that out of
there's
the
sort of a lot of
evaluate.
streams to keep in mind here that obviously you kind of want to you want to think through it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
think
and
through
take
it.
everything into account. Um yeah.
That's the big thing, right? Think through this.
Yeah.
What the Lord, like, and what we're doing right now is like, oh my gosh, all we're doing for the last 2 hours and 15 minutes is talk about money. Or like, this is what, like, that sounds like all we're talking about is money. You sound like a lover of money. You're trying to tell me, well, it's like, these are tools, okay? These are tools to help us use the tool of money. And so, just like a hammer, if you're trying to demolish, there's a difference between using a hammer to demolish something and using a hammer to nail in nails or to pull a nail out. Okay. Like it's two different functions. And so one's that kind of one's destructive and the other one is constructive, right?
Right.
And a hammer can be used for both. And so same for money. Man, that worked out nice. It's a stretch. All analogies break down somewhere. But
Yeah.
money can be used for destructive things and constructive things. And what we're trying to do is can we use our money constructively so we can be better Christians? The Lord has
Mhm.
given us skills and hands and abilities to earn money, and then He's given us the wisdom and the Word of God to be able to take the money that we earned with those hands and skills through God's grace and to use them to accomplish His purposes. And debt hinders. It is sad when you have people that I can't tithe, I can't give to that ministry, I can't give to that homeless person, I can't. Not because they don't have money, but because they might have made a poor purchase,
Hmm.
or they had a credit card, or they got the house that they can't afford because the idea of having a smaller one doesn't look right, or they have needs to be met that really aren't needs that needed to be met.
Yeah.
And so you got to be careful, and that to the point where even it impacts your relationships, not just having debt in the sense of in your relationships where you borrow money from your parents, you have them co-sign on something, you have a friend lend you $5, but
Yeah.
just the strain. So many married couples, what couples fight over the most is money and sex
Yeah.
and their relationships, and how they're going to make ends meet. It's so stressful. And it's not stressful necessarily because the person doesn't have a job, although that can happen, or that like, oh, you're just lazy, because that can happen. But that maybe they're not living within their means, or they bought into this lie that they needed a certain credit card, or they needed to live in a certain type of house or drive a certain type of car, and it goes way beyond that. I'm just trying to think of
Yeah. It's kind of
very
like
easy things
living
to
that
apply.
certain lifestyle that they're looking for could be part of the
Hmm.
problem.
Exactly. Um, but obviously, you don't want to get into debt. Anyone in debt understands, yeah, you don't want to be where I am. And so
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is that the Bible addresses debt. The Bible talks a whole lot about money.
Yeah.
And I think the first step is actually acknowledging that debt is a problem. We start to like turn ourselves off and become numb to the issue as an issue. Oh, you don't want to be in debt. It shouldn't be the norm. It's not good that it's become the norm. That we're just, debt's a way of life. It's like that's not real living at all.
Yeah.
It sucks.
And this episode is about debt, not even necessarily just about money, because this episode is under the big category of money. We could keep talking for. I mean, I've taken a class on this. I know you've taken a class on. I've taken a class on money and possessions. I know
Hmm.
you've taken a class, I'm sure, similar to it. We could talk about
Yes.
this for probably a season. Uh, but we have
Oh
an
yeah.
episode right now on debt, and so I feel like was a good foundation to kind of draw up from. But and I've said this a few times, but people tend to find what will trigger them, right? People want to get
Hmm.
offended because then you don't have to keep listening. Um, but
Oh yeah.
the whole point to this is not necessarily to say, oh, well, you're being dumb, or here's what you need to do. This is more sort of tackling, and we've even used real life examples of people that have met that criteria. So this is sort of like, if this principle can help you, if this principle can help you, if this person's that we're talking about, if their circumstance sort of relates to yours, it's not to say that you're terrible with your money or any of that, but more to kind of try and shine the light on maybe some of your blind spots that you might not be aware of. Like I said with the guy who was smoking a lot of weed and wasn't able to afford what he needed, although he was spending certainly more than that amount in smoking. And so that was a blind spot for him. And I'm not sure whether he made the adjustment, but I certainly showed him that he could afford it. And so he didn't have. I don't know what he chose, but he certainly didn't talk much about it after that.
Right.
And so
Well, because you probably, yeah, you didn't tell him what he wanted to hear.
yeah, exactly. And so these are more of just hopefully principles that you maybe might be able to implement into yourself if you are in debt. Or even if you want to be a little bit more financially responsible, maybe one of these principles were able to help you out. Well, that being said, though, Dave, do you have a resource that you would recommend? The only one that I could think on this topic, because I don't really have any books on debt. I would just say I know Dave Ramsey does a great job with people. I would only disagree with him on some of his theological stuff on behind that, but he does a
Mm,
great job um, regarding budgeting and sort of some of these principles that we've been laying out here this episode. So I would recommend him. David, would you recommend anything?
yes. Okay. I'm just
Yes.
playing. Yeah, I know. I've talked for 2 hours. I sure hope I have like something to like. No, just trust what I said. Uh, no, a lot of this helped. A great book, uh, on this topic. Two books actually that can help you. One is Money, Debt, and Finances, like all the trigger words: money, debt, and finances. And you're like, what's the difference between money and finances? Because finances is what you do with that money. And so,
Yeah.
so money, debt, and finances, critical questions and answers. And it covers a whole litany of things about, talking about gambling, or if you have to borrow money, co-signing, dealing with family, absorbing another family member's debt. Isn't it more Christian to, isn't it charity or charitable or a sacrifice to take on someone's debt as your own? And you
Yeah.
get like, be careful with that. And so it covers a whole, wise ways to earn income, uh, finding that fine line between, are you know are you power hungry, are you a lover of money, or you're like, hey, these are my skills, these are my gifts, and I want to make sure I'm always adequately compensated for those talents that God's given me to better my life, give to the church, give to others, sacrifice for my family, whatever have you. And so it's a fantastic resource and really conversational. Lots of Bible in it. It's all scriptural. And then the last one is actually also by the same author, Dr. Jim Newheiser. Money, Seeking God's Wisdom. It's a 31-day devotional. And so you can do it in 31 days, or, as you're available, you do a day it's 31 days. They don't have to all be consecutively,
Yeah.
but it's almost like a boiled down version of some of those principles. It's like, hey, what if I consolidated all of that really good wisdom from money, debt, and finances, and we consolidated that into a 31-day devotional style?
Hmm. Okay.
And so it's extremely helpful. I've done both as well. Like I have used these. I'm not beyond this. I needed them in my life, and that's what kind of helped me get to where I am today. And it's helped me and Amber's relationship, finances, and being a pastor. Mike,
Yeah.
we look at budget sheets,
Yep.
and especially for me, our congregational meetings coming up. Like we're actually getting ready to look at, the proposed budget for 2024 and looking at those expenses and more. Like,
I can tell
you,
you,
you don't want to
as
be that guy
I
if
can
you
tell
want
you,
to be
as
your
a
own.
guy who, I don't do a lot of budgeting in myself. I sort of have it figured out, and I always save. I'm really good at, like, I just want to save every penny as much as I can, and then, like I said, I just use it up at the end. So build up the nest egg, and that's sort of my
Right.
hobby. Try and build that nest egg up more and more and more. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, I will say that when I became a pastor, I don't think I've dealt with budgeting more in my life than during that time. So it is kind of funny that yeah, the pastoral position has definitely gotten me to to budget a lot more. And then that's even like, I'm not even necessarily involved in the money per se. I do have an accountant that
Right.
takes care of it, but I'm still having to make sure that, we're not overspending in certain areas, and I'm also looking at where we might be able to cut some costs and save some money. And so, yeah, it is one of those things where, as pastors, we are always trying to discern how we could use our money more wisely.
Yeah, like because you need to know and your priorities.
Yeah.
If you are all about the entertainment and streaming over tithe, then you will always have money in for entertainment and you'll never have money for tithe.
Mm-mm.
Because where your treasures are, that's where your heart will be also.
Yeah, the
Um,
offering the
and
offering is a
so
big one.
it's
Um,
yeah,
and we didn't even
yeah,
get
yeah.
to offerings. And so,
No,
but
because
that's
like
like, that is another episode too. And so, I mean, we sort of kind
it
of
is,
narrowed our
it
focus.
is.
Yeah. Well, I
Yes.
think I think we have sufficiently kind of encapsulated, I think, the debt conversation a bit here today. And I've really enjoyed the conversation. It was one thing where we certainly thought this would be a good conversation to have, especially with how much it's troubling people of our age and just people in today's day, really, our culture in general, are having trouble with debt. And we really just hope that these principles and speaking into that, and even deriving some of that from these timeless truths solidified in the Bible, would really help us think through our finances and even how we live a little bit more wisely. Once again, this
Mm.
this episode came because you guys asked for it. You guys wanted to see what was behind this, and we are listening to you guys, and we love the feedback. Uh, So don't forget to comment, don't forget to like, don't forget to share this with others. If you have someone that needs some financial principles in their lives, you can go ahead and share this episode with them. But even more so, you are going to be the reason why we get out and other people come to us. And so feel free to share our podcast, whether it be a YouTube link or a Spotify link. We really appreciate you. And even if you don't do any of that and you just tune in every week, we really love you and we really appreciate the support. And so we just wanted to make that frank. We really do love to have you with us in this conversation every week. And so, yeah, we will see you guys
Mm.
in the next episode. Bye.